The world is plunged into chaos and destruction. The sky is filled with despair, and the atmosphere has acquired a dark state. Meanwhile, a homeless man picks up a broken can. After surveying the can, he hopes that the food inside the can is still eatable. He then gazes over at the end of the street from where he hears screams for help. He sees that a guy is being chased by a horde of zombies. Seeing this, the homeless man immediately begins to run to save his life. All of a sudden, a ray of light strikes the ground, and the ones in danger have been put in some sort of a floating bubble, but no one understands what's going on. We then see a man telling himself that this should be the last wave, but then he sees another horde of zombies coming his way, making him realize that there are more. With just one blow, he manages to perish all the remaining zombies. He then activates his ability to annex and uses land restoration to restore the world to its original shape. The homeless person starts thinking that he has lost his mind as he cannot comprehend what's happening in front of his eyes. He wonders if the city is being restored, looks around, and sees strange lights. Shortly after, the homeless person spots the guy doing all this and immediately recognizes him as the one who came to give them the antidote for the virus when he was in the army. However, none of them, including the homeless man, believed in him at the time. This makes him realize that they destroyed the world with their own hands, and now all the responsibility is on the guy's shoulder, who is busy restoring the world. Meanwhile, the guy gets done with the restoration, followed by the system congratulating him. The system then tells the guy to look as if the people are praying and begging that he stay and continue to help them survive in this chaotic world. The system even tells him that the world is in such a state due to the blunders of humanity, and that he should not be worrying about it. Moreover, it suggests that these people are enough to ignite a spark of civilization that could thrive on planet Earth again. However, he tells the system that it's just mumbling. Meanwhile, the survivors have arrived at a situation where they are praising him as a god and believe that he is their one true savior. They are begging for him to stay, requesting him not to leave them alone. But the guy tells them that his mission on our planet is done, and tells them that the ones who can save them are themselves now. He then reminds them that their survival means the survival of the entire civilization. He then proceeds to call the system and mentions to leave for the next world. Meanwhile, the system is annoyed by the fact that the guy is using complicated terms to convey his orders. On a sunny day, the city is going on about their life. They seem to be calmly doing their daily tasks, and nothing of concern seems to be a part of their lives. A young man is smoking a cigarette while talking with someone about May being in his bathroom. As he is talking on the phone, he sees a bright flashing light in the sky, grabbing everyone's attention. Suddenly, pockets open up in the sky and Wang Deifa, the guy being praised earlier as a god, comes out of it. He takes a sigh of relief after successfully getting out. The system then notifies Wang that he saved the lives of 2 million people in the middle of a virus outbreak. The system further explains that each life saved is equal to 1 point, which means that he has received 2 million points that he gets to spend on salvation items. Shortly after, the system congratulates Wang for becoming a doomsday savior. Wang understands that if he hadn't spent his points at the very last moment to redeem the universal healing, he is sure that the world would have ended up becoming a living hell. Moreover, he was also ashamed at the time of his departure since he was leaving them with very few resources to survive. However, the system soon tells Wang that he doesn't have to get too hung up on these details. He explains to Wang that a savior's job is to ensure the survival of humanity, and emphasizes the fact that 2 million people are enough to sustain humanity. This way, the flame of civilization will also not be lost, which is what matters the most. Furthermore, the system also informs Wang regarding the number of points he requires to rank up to 9, and the points are way more than we can even count. This makes Wang realize that he has a long way to go before he can return home, but this time, he has decided to do things differently compared to the last time. This time, Wang has decided to earn as many points as possible by stop doing it all alone. He thinks that he can create a group of people in this world who can prove to be useful to him. Suddenly, the system brings it to light to Wang that he is gaining too much attention, thus he suggests that they go somewhere else. Wang then asks the system to give him a detailed introduction. The system begins explaining that the world that is about to plunge into destruction is called Sector SAD 2342, Earth number SDE 878. This Earth happens to have entered the stage of peace a long time ago. Moreover, due to the rapid economic growth, spiritual needs and developments have been brought out, but the food industry remains the most important one. Recently, This Earth has been caught up in the negative effects of extreme weather, with many occurrences of extreme temperatures and cold. Not only that, constant floods and droughts have led to a drastic reduction in food and energy production. Wang notices that this Earth is looking a lot like his, when suddenly he notices some men spying on him from the corner of their eyes. The system immediately notifies Wang that he has been discovered, and asks if he wants to spend some points to use the hidden identity item. However, Wang asks the system to save the precious points and decides to ignore the two men spying on him. He is then pulled into a restaurant by a door attendant who asks him if he would like to taste their food. At first, Wang explains that he is busy, but soon when mentions that the food is free, Wang has no choice but to try it. Inside the restaurant, two guys seem to be discussing how they are very lucky to have been allowed to taste the heavenly food made by the hands of Lady Mo. She seems to be quite popular in the food industry, and judging by the talks, her food-making skills seem to be on par with the goddess. Miss Mo soon arrives and thanks all of them for taking time out of their busy schedules to taste the food of her first banquet. She explains that she has made a Chinese pastry for them called Blossom Among the Flowers. She then claps her hands twice, and in no time, the waiters bring the pastry. As soon as the pastry is served, Wang takes the first bite and is left in shock by the divine taste that it consists of. The lovely smell, adding to the heavenly taste of the pastry, makes Wang feel like he is eating the whole spring. Wang recalls that he has never eaten delicious food since the day he got in contact with the system. Mo then makes her way to Wang and asks him his opinion about the pastry. Wang defines the pastry as delicious and tells Mo that she has created such wonderful things for this world, which is why he has decided that the civilization of this world should not be destroyed. However, Mo does not understand a single word that came out of Wang's mouth. Wang then excuses himself, mentioning that he does not have enough time to explain since the people that are looking for him have already arrived. Mo then turns around, and the man introduces himself as Chief Cha Yongzhang from the Special Affairs Bureau. He tells Mo that he wants to have a word with Wang, leading to an infuriating Mo telling him that this is a place to serve food. She continues by telling Cha that she cannot allow anyone to interrogate anyone who has come to her restaurant to eat. Cha explains that he understands how much the restaurant and food mean to her, but adds that Wang is no ordinary person. Meanwhile, Wang calmly sits there, analyzes Cha, and discovers that he is in the top rank of executives and coordinators. This leads Cha to question Wang about his purpose, leaving Wang believing that it's a very straightforward question. Wang then decides to show them instead of telling, and the system ends up making a holographic projection. There, Cha and Koza discover that their world is about to end in 3 years. Wang then introduces himself as the savior of this world and explains that his purpose is to prevent this world from plunging into chaos and destruction. However, Chu is not believing all this to be true, leading Wang to explain that he is related to the one who can manipulate time. Wang then suggests that they make a bet. He has decided to give them a few prophecies to verify for themselves whether they come true or not. Wang believes that once they find out that his prophecies are true, they wouldn't meet him with such arrogance as they are doing now. In a confident tone, Wang assures Cha and Ko that he is the only one who can save their world from destruction. As soon as Wang hands over the list to Chu of disasters that are about to occur, he is completely left in awe and does not believe that it's possible, but Wang understands that Chu and his superiors will need some time to verify these prophecies. One thing he warns Chu, though, is not to delay the rescue response. Wang reveals that a magnitude 5.7 earthquake will hit Songshan County, killing 3 people that night, and then another earthquake on the same night will occur of a 6.2 magnitude along with a tsunami at the coast of Viramala. The latter disaster will result in 123 people going missing. The same day, a flight to West Asia, A3562, is also prophesied to crash due to extreme weather conditions, resulting in the death of 175 people. Meanwhile, Chu and Kumern believe that if these prophecies are true, then the world will succumb to chaos due to the loss of millions of lives. With that, Wang asks for the banquet to be cleared out. Chu then assures Wang that he will pass these prophecies on to his superiors without making any changes to the situation. In response, Wang reveals that he has been testing them since they stepped into the banquet, and hopes that they prove themselves worthy enough to be saved. Wang then goes ahead and starts eating yet again, causing the system to angrily remark how Wang still has a heart to eat. However, the system is aware that no matter how bad things get, one still has to enjoy life in some way, as they have no choice but to fight the disaster. Meanwhile, Chu appears to have successfully delivered Wang's message to his superiors. One of them believes that Wang may have some powers, but he is being too unbelievable when he talks about the world ending. However, another one of them mentions how Wang seems like a legit person, as he has looked into his identity. Furthermore, he appears to have already taken precautionary measures by sending rescue teams to the locations of disasters that Wang has predicted. To ensure the safety of everyone, he appears to have already started getting concerned. This act of safety is taken badly by another superior, who questions the guy as to how he climbed up to a position where he can make decisions. Another one of their superiors tells Xiao Chu, the guy to have sent rescue teams, that he is still too young to understand how to make decisions in such a situation. He explains how they get doomsday prophecies every year, and not just one or two, but thousands. He believes that the leaders don't have to get worked up, and just send in patrol cars to keep the area in check, and to tell the residents to go outside and stay there for a while until the dangers of disaster are over. However, Xiao Chu still stands his ground, and explains that if the disasters are to become true, and the buildings collapse, it will cause the deaths of many people. Seeing his aggressive behavior, the superiors have no choice but to let Xiao do what he wants, since they cannot really stop him. Moreover, they realize that if it becomes known to the public that federal resources were used to encounter some stupid prophecy, then it would be such a shame for the government. Soon, the commander walks in, asking Xiao what he was thinking when he made that decision. Thereafter, another man reveals that Songshan County isn't even in the earthquake zone, and there are no traces of any earthquakes occurring there. He then asks Zhao if he is going to take responsibility to address the public and calm them down. Zhao then turns to the commander and reminds him that he was the one to teach him that the Bureau is made to protect people's lives and their properties. He further believes that when a prophecy of such danger is made, instead of denying it, it is much better if precautionary measures are taken to prevent any loss of life or property. The commander is conflicted about this situation, but one thing that he is certain about is that if Wang is not from a race of humans, then his heart is different. There is only 1 minute remaining now for the first disaster to occur. The commander has already ordered Wang to be taken down, leaving Xiao surprised. However, the commander explains that it is much better to ensure the goodwill of everyone. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, marking the occurrence of an earthquake. This also marks the first prophecy to have come true. The commander is in a state of disbelief and cannot wrap his mind around the fact that someone has managed to prophesize an impossible natural disaster. He then asks for Wang to be brought in immediately, as he has personally decided to interrogate him. Soon, it is discovered that Wang has disappeared out of plain sight, and that they have lost track of him. The questions begin getting tossed around in the conference room about the whereabouts of Wang. Funny enough, he has teleported himself onto one of the seats in the conference room, and reveals that he is already here. In no time, the soldiers arrive with their guns, and surround Wang from all sides, asking him to raise his hands. Seeing their speed of arrival, Wang finds it to be passable, and is impressed by their performance. The soldier then once again asks Wang to lift his hands, prompting him to knock them all back while making their weapons float in the air. Wang then explains that it is of no use for them to such weaponry against him, as he cannot get hurt by them. Wang then reveals that it was a disappointment, but they passed the test nonetheless, as they were very quick to catch up to him. Meanwhile, Xiao asks the commander if he can carry on with the prophecies now. They then soon discover that 2 old buildings collapsed due to a crack in the wall, and that the relevant personnel were transferred in time. The personnel happened to be 3 elderly men, and because of the force's early intervention, there were no casualties due to the earthquake. Not only that, the news comes of a tsunami occurring right after the earthquake, marking Wang's 2 prophecies out of 3 to have come true. Meanwhile, Xiao soon mentions that the flight has already taken off, and a severe thunderstorm has been caught up in the radars. Moreover, the chances of the plane avoiding that thunderstorm are very slim, and all 157 passengers are expected to be dead. The commander then hurriedly asks Xiao to do something about it, who then explains that it is already too late and that it is near impossible for the plane to avoid the thunderstorm. As a sign of goodwill and to show sincerity since they are working together, Wang volunteers to bring back all the passengers on that plane alive. He then goes ahead to the plane's location to assess the situation and discovers that the thunderstorm is rotating at a staggering speed of 50 kilometers per hour. With that being said, the speed is calculated to have kept increasing. At this rate, it will take the plane 10 minutes to reach the thunderstorm, and it will tear the plane into pieces. Soon, Wang realizes that moving the plane should be enough to save it from getting destroyed. The thunderstorm is getting scarier, and the winds are getting way faster than anticipated. The clouds are constantly rumbling along with the lightning strikes going on at a higher rate. In the middle of all this, Wang is flying there in the center of everything, thinking of various ways to prevent the loss of life. He then decides to use his magic lightning infestation. This is an ability which enables Wang to turn invisible thunder and lightning into tangible existence. It also turns huge energy into huge power, thus giving him more ways to handle this situation. Meanwhile, the pilots are absolutely taken aback by the visuals that they are witnessing. At first, they believe that they are seeing things, but when looked closely, they realize that there is someone outside flying while holding lightning. This comes off as nothing ordinary, as an average lightning is believed to have over 100 million volts of electricity, and a person to be standing in the middle of all those volts of electricity has to be a superhuman. Even the pilots believe that they are witnessing Superman in front of their eyes. Meanwhile, the system immediately warns Wang about the speed of the tornado getting increased. The speed is detected to be reaching 340 kilometers per second. Moreover, Wang appears to have only 10 seconds left before the storm hits him, so the system immediately asks him to get out of there as soon as possible. Further, the system asks Wang to carry out whatever he is planning at this very moment, before it gets too late. Meanwhile, the pilots are also aware that they are moving toward the danger. The senior pilot asks the co-pilot to start pulling the lever and not to let go. They appear to have decided to gain some more altitude to prevent getting hit by the storm, as they are getting close to it. However, the co-pilot reveals to the captain that there is not enough time left and asks him to quickly make a decision that would save them from this drastic situation. All of a sudden, the plane gets surrounded by a bolt of strange lightning that does not seem to be natural by any means. The pilots are confused as the plane has come to a total stop, even with its engine running. They then soon see that the person flying earlier is in front of the plane. At the same time, the system questions Wang about what he is planning to do, leading Wang to explain that they will be able to take care of the situation if he manages to take the plane out of the storm's path. The system understands that these measures are meant to be taken, but he reminds Wang that this will cause inertia at a rate that cannot be handled by normal humans. Meanwhile, the passengers inside are gasping for breath. Some are fainting while the others are scared that they are going to die. During their panic, Wang successfully manages to get the plane out of the storm's path, while also managing to save all the passengers that are on this flight. After seeing the bright sun shining in the sky, the passengers are left in shock to witness a miracle unfold in front of their eyes. Meanwhile, Wang takes a sigh of relief after realizing that he has just got out of a very dangerous situation that could have ended hundreds of lives. Simultaneously, the passengers inside the plane believe that they have been saved by an angel, and they seem to lose their minds over this. Back on the ground, the commander receives news that the flight is preparing to land at its desired location. With this news, the commander stands in disbelief, with his eyes wide open as he can't comprehend that a plane can make such a journey in this short period. He wonders if he is dreaming, but then he sees the same flight landing in front of him, making him realize that all this is true, and that none of this is being faked. In no time, the media arrives there and begins asking the captain to explain everything in detail about what happened. The captain starts by explaining that he saw a hero in the sky that was flying in the middle of the storm. He also explains how the same hero tied their entire plane with a bolt of unnatural lightning, and believes that this is something that can be pulled off only by someone who has godlike powers. One of the reporters then confirms to the captain if he said that the hero was flying, while the other asks him to tell more details about this hero that he mentioned. Some reporters also believe that the captain must be seeing things due to the storm, but as they are believing their speculations more and more, Wang comes flying there. The reporters now believe that what they have been told is true, as they are witnessing the hero of miracles, and the one who managed to save 157 lives just on his own. The reporters also notice that he is flying and quickly ask their cameramen to take a picture of him. Shortly after, Wang makes his way back to the conference room, where the commander finally believes that Wang is not spewing just some nonsense, rather he knows what's going to happen next. The commander then tells Wang that they need more information to find out what caused all this, and questions if there is a possibility of remedy remaining for them. Wang grows happy to see that the leaders of this world have finally started showing some competence, but he still does not know how to explain items to them that he exchanged from the system. On top of that, Wang is aware that no matter which world he goes to, the people will always swing back and forth between justice and selfishness. He believes that if they recruit and train people, they should definitely respect them, but also provide them benefits, as it is better to imitate them and establish an organization in the process. In this way, Wang will not only be able to give orders but can also recruit talents from various worlds. Wang explains that he was sent here to investigate the cause of the apocalypse based on the predictions calculated by the organization. He further tells them that the causes of the apocalypse are varied, but it is bound to happen nonetheless, and faster than they can imagine. After being asked by Xiaochu, Wang reveals that he belongs to an organization called Universal Order Preservation Association. The job of this organization is to observe the operations of different parallel worlds. Not only that, this organization actually works with the locals to save their world. This leads Xiaochu to believe that the organization is quite notorious for the work they do, and thus it should have many entities like Wang. However, with a smirk on his face, Wang reveals that he is the only one with this much prowess. Soon, the system reminds Wang that it is also a part of the organization, and that they are both individual beings. Wang then follows this up by revealing that 3 years later, an apocalypse will hit their Earth, and it will trigger the extinction of humanity. This revelation has left a great shock on everyone's face present in the room. The commander seems to believe whatever Wang is disclosing, but questions him if he has the necessary means to resolve this matter, since the said apocalypse is meant to be inevitable. Seeing the commander getting serious, Wang points out how he has started taking him seriously now. In response, the commander stands his ground and explains that they had to take precautionary measures to ensure not to get fooled just by anyone. After that, Wang advises them not to put all their hopes in him, and goes on to show them the world that he handled previously, which was then wiped out by a zombie virus in less than a year. As it turns out, Wang reached the people with the cure for the zombie virus, but what he saw was that there were only 2 million people left, working for their survival. After handing over the virus, Wang went back to his association. There, they considered Wang's recent mission as successful since he managed to save the civilization. In this way, Wang explains that the association does not care at all about how many people are killed in the process, as long as humanity survives. This means that the leaders of this world will be the ones responsible for how they shape the future of civilization. Thereafter, the commander tells Wang about a saying of an ancient king, leading his tribe to build a dam to control floods when the danger arrives. However, Wang seems to have heard the same, or at least similar saying in the previous worlds he saved, and realizes that they are all the same. The commander then assures Wang that they will prove with their actions that they are worth being saved. Wang then leaves the meeting room where he meets with Mo Chu's father, Mo Yuanbai. He expresses his appreciation for Wang to like his daughter's food. While conversating with him, it takes Wang little to no time to realize that he is there for his own personal matters. Yuanbai then suggests that they talk while eating, and mentions the matter of apocalypse. Wang then questions Yuanbai if he believes that the apocalypse will come, but soon discovers that he just wants him to act as a hot topic, as a formidable superhero for his business to grow, and for his assets to be saved. Yuanbai has no doubts that Wang possesses some unimaginable abilities, but he believes that he can bribe Wang into working for him. Wang then tries to explain to Yuanbai that no matter how many assets he has, they will be swept away in an instant once the huge tsunami hits the world. Wang further mentions to Yuanbai that it is his personal choice to believe in the apocalypse or not, but not believing it is not going to make it stop. Meanwhile, Yuanbai wonders if Wang really thinks he can save billions of people all on his own. Poor guy doesn't seem to have done his research on Wang, it seems. What he truly cares about is that his assets are saved, and Yuanbai does not seem to care about the apocalypse at all. Once again acting foolish, Yuanbai offers to build Wang a unique spaceship in exchange for his cooperation. Wang realizes that no matter what world he goes to, the rich people are going to stay the same. He further tells Yuanbai that humans are not classified by wealth or money, but rather by their level of life. If they do not possess that, they cannot escape their fate. These things are what Wang tries to warn the rich men in the previous world, but they did not listen. Wang then takes Yuanbai to a virtual scene where he shows humanity's effort going in vain for building titanium alloy weaponry. Wang then pulls Yuanbai out of the virtual scene and explains that disasters do not care about wealth. He then offers him to join the Universal Order Preservation Association, and reveals that the association will guide him to the extraordinary path. The scene that he just saw was something very unique for him. This leads Wang to question Yuanbai about what he has achieved by mobilizing all the power that his family has. Yuanbai understands what Wang is trying to ask of him, and mentions that he will have the necessary reports ready. During all this conversation, the two seem to have reached the VIP dining room, and Wang is already starving. He then turns around and makes one more request from Yuanbai, asking him to prepare a place for residence for him, stating that the saviors also need to rest from time to time. Mo Chu is completely indulged in making this the best experience for Wang. She recalls that his father personally invited Wang to their restaurant, and that she should be prepared to give him the best quality service that he has ever had. She then asks the other workers to check the temperature of the plates, while she decides to notify Wang regarding the dinner. The workers then begin to gossip about how Mo Q is personally trying to make sure to give all her attention to this mysterious yet popular guest. However, their conversation is soon interrupted by a loud yell heard from outside the kitchen. They quickly go to check and discover Mo Q astonished while looking at the news. The news of Wang saving 238 people appears to be getting broadcast. Meanwhile, Wang appears to be lost in his thoughts. He contemplates how natural disasters such as earthquakes are happening more frequently, and that the mysterious measurement is also normal. It appears to Wang that this is more like a scientific crisis. Mo Chu then questions Wang if he was the one who saved all those people on the plane, leading him to respond and mention that they were nothing in comparison to the billions of people that he has the potential to save. He further realizes that he needs to depend on external assistance and luck if he wants to save more people. There, the system arrives with a notification, revealing that the Doomsday Lottery is now open. The system further clarifies that each draw costs 1,000 points, and Wang happens to have 10,000 points. Wang then decides to perform the 10 draw at once. Meanwhile, Mo Chu stands there, confused and wondering if this is a card draw game. Wang explains that the association places high-tech items from various worlds inside this draw, and that this is purely luck-based. This makes Wang understand that the fate of humanity lies solely in his luck, and what items he gets after utilizing his points. The system then proceeds to show the animation of the first 10 draws. The light that's coming from this animation is so strong that the bystanders have to cover their eyes, or else they will go blind, the ones who are not already at least. The first item that Wang obtains from the draw is of rare quality, an artificial mini-sun. Seeing this, Wang is disappointed since he already possesses nuclear fusion energy, and finds that the mini-sun is completely useless for him. Meanwhile, Mo Q seems to have lost her mind after seeing that this is not some normal card draw game. However, her interest in watching this draw further has not died down. The next item Wang obtains is a supreme hover car. However, he finds it useless as well. Beginner implant prosthesis manufacturing technology is the item that Wang acquires from the next draw, but it turns out not to be from this world, and can only be used in Track 2077. Wang then acquires a micro-artificial satellite, and just like that, 8 of his draws have been used out of 10. Out of those 8 draws, Wang hasn't gotten a single useful item so far. Some of the items are completely useless for Wang, while the others cannot be used in the world that he is currently residing in. Seeing this, Mo Chu appears to enjoy it a little bit, noticing that even the saviors have to be dependent on their luck in gacha-based games to succeed. However, Wang seems to have 2 more chances left. He awaits to see his luck change in these last 2 tries. As soon as he proceeds to reveal the last 2 draws, a legendary golden light brightens up the room. In his last 2 draws, Wang obtains a U-75 multifunctional mechanical bionic and a Taylor-class airborne fortress commander. This marks the moment when Wang has gotten something useful. The U-75 robot happens to be equipped with a Type 2 artificial intelligence module that is comprehensively protective of its master's safety. The master in this case happens to Wang. The robot immediately detects weapons nearby and goes on to apprehend them by pulling them using his electromagnetic arms. The man who had the gun on him is totally confused about what just happened, leaving him confused. Meanwhile, the robot declares that the danger has been cleared. The Taylor-class airborne fortress commander then speaks up and mentions that she is nothing like U-75, but reveals that she is evolved from the super quantum computer. The airborne fortress happens to be a fortress that can stay suspended in the air for a long time, while possessing many technologies at the same time. The fortress commander then reveals that she is flying 3 kilometers high in the sky, as of this moment, scanning the entire Earth. With this technology, she can not only pilot the airborne fortress that can travel through universes, but can also provide useful firepower support to Wang. While explaining all this, she already seems to have taken over the entire world's information network system. Wang is finally happy to have something really useful. Meanwhile, Mo Q is left with a very wide-open jaw after witnessing the fortress commander taking over the information network system in just the blink of an eye. To give proof, the fortress commander begins to reveal information about the people present in the room along with their names, leaving them convinced that her powers are not fake. The fortress commander then broadcasts a piece of news for Wang, revealing that a high-speed car just appeared on her radar 2 streets away. The information that she can find is that the people in the car are from the Special Affairs Bureau, along with Chu Lin and Che Yongchang. Hearing this, Wang's interest peaks after listening to the name of the Special Affairs Bureau. Shin instructs the U-75 robot, Chi-Woo, to go and receive the guests. Chi-Woo then proceeds to the parking area and confirms their identities, addressing them as Captain Ju and Vice Captain Che. He informs them that Mr. Shin is waiting for them in the reception room and asks them to follow him. A shocked Captain Ju whispers to Vice Captain Che, questioning whether Chi-Woo is a real robot and not a human in disguise. Vice Captain Che tries to steady his nerves at the sight of the impressive machine and reassures himself to stay calm, reminding himself that it's just a talking self-aware robot that resembles a war machine. Even though it's his first time seeing one, he tells himself not to show fear. As they get out of the car, Vice Captain Che asks the robot what they should call him, to which the robot responds that they can call him Chi-Woo. Captain Ju, observing how effectively and intelligently Chi-Woo is conversing, can't help but wonder if Earth has ever achieved this level of technology yet. As Chi-Woo begins leading them to Shin, Vice Captain Che asks about the nature of the place they are in. Meanwhile, Shin is monitoring Earth and notes that chaos seems to reign everywhere. He notices Captain Ju and inquires about what happened. Captain Ju explains that there's a situation involving Shin's decision not to hide his identity when he prevented the plane crash. Shin, smiling, responds by questioning why he would hide. Vice Captain Che nervously interjects, noting that the news has already shocked the entire world, and if the news about the apocalypse becomes public, it could cause chaos that would severely hinder their organization's efforts to combat it. Captain Ju agrees, adding that there is a risk that foreign governments might place the blame for social unrest entirely on Shin. And even with full cooperation, it would be difficult for Shin to operate globally. He then shows a video to Shin in which a reporter is covering the incident, describing how an Asian-looking man saved a plane in an incredibly bizarre manner, even hovering above the plane for several minutes and allowing people to take pictures. The reporter notes that the man doesn't seem like the kind of superhero who stays low-key and wears a mask, but instead flaunts himself and enjoys being called a savior and worshipped as a hero. Vice Captain Che tells Shin that the higher-ups say they can help him conceal his identity and reduce the spread of negative news among the public, and asks for his opinion on this. However, Shin responds that there is no need, and he is fine with the media spreading the news as much as they want. The more exaggerated, the better. Captain Ju, clearly nervous, warns that Shin might not understand how some journalists can twist the facts. Shin interrupts, stating that he has already mentioned that he comes from a parallel Earth and is well aware of their tactics. He explains that he intends to use the media's powerful publicity to spread his name far and wide, emphasizing that people are different. Some will fight to the last breath no matter what, while others will fall into hysterical fear, dying in terror and regret. He asks who they think he would rather see. Vice Captain Che responds that naturally, it would be those who resist. Shin nods in agreement, stating that everything depends on this. He believes that rather than letting people die peacefully in ignorance, it's better to let them prepare amid intense questioning. He emphasizes that enough people need to know that the apocalypse is coming. Vice Captain Che, surprised, asks if Shin is willing to bear doubt and ridicule to achieve his goal. Captain Ju is shocked, thinking that this is the way of the savior. Shin smiles and tells them that he will continue to expand and enhance the organization's influence so that more and more people become aware that the apocalypse is near. He believes that only then can they select those willing to resist and dare to fight against the heavens. Vice Captain Che assures Shin that they've already mobilized specialized personnel under his command and are ready to take action immediately upon his word. However, Shin tells him to leave it at that for now. As they prepare to leave, Vice Captain Che can't help but ask Chi-Woo about his technology, assuming he must be one of Mr. Shin's top units. Chi-Woo replies, somewhat ashamed, that he is just a temporarily drafted level 11 AI experiment, and that there hasn't been mass production yet, so he can't take on that responsibility. Upon hearing this, both Captain Ju and Vice Captain Che are surprised and wonder what this could mean, but they don't press further and take their leave. As they walk away, Vice Captain Che whispers to Captain Ju that they must report to the Academy immediately so they can come to see this robot, believing that it will help them realize just how limitless science truly is. Captain Ju agrees, noting that establishing good relations with Mr. Shin and mastering some extraterrestrial high-tech will surely give them more leverage in their preparations. Every word of their conversation with Chi-Woo is monitored by Shin from his room, with the help of the female robot. Listening to their discussion, Shin remarks that tonight's mission is to closely monitor the reactions of countries and major powers, predicting that they won't be as brainless as those ignorant media outlets. He hopes they don't start infighting before the apocalypse even begins. Observing this, Shin comments on how the interest struggles among human groups never end. The female robot asks Shin if they should take countermeasures, but Shin replies that there is no need. To survive at any cost, a bit of selfishness is within his tolerance anyway, and they can't harm him. Standing up from his seat, Shin says that they also need to start preparing. He then commands the system to exchange points chi for gold disaster predictions. The system consumes the points and displays the following predictions. At 4:20 a.m. tonight, a fire will be triggered by a lightning strike at the Emden Supreme Apartments in Faro City, resulting in 525 deaths, along with 236 injuries. Moreover, on the 11th of August at 7:15 p.m., a magnitude 5.3 earthquake will hit Libu City, causing 12 deaths along with 128 injuries. Other than that, on X year X day at 3:24 p.m., the Lucendo volcano cluster will experience an explosive eruption with airflow and volcanic ash, burying Bainan City, Duobaoman City, Tian'erbi City, and surrounding areas, causing 560,000 deaths. Not only that, on X month X day, the eruption of Mount Narasa Mao will trigger a ground collapse. On X month X day at 3:42 p.m., the Chalins volcano will erupt. Upon seeing these disaster predictions, Shin realizes that a global volcanic eruption is imminent, happening in just a week. The deaths of at least tens of millions are just the prelude. He then instructs Ding Xiang, the female robot, to issue a warning in the name of the association, telling them that anyone who doesn't want to die should start behaving for their own good. In Faro City, at the Emden Supreme Apartments, the weather at 1 a.m. is quite frightening. The sky is filled with ominous clouds, and the sound of thunder is devastating. A woman named Rossetti is utterly exhausted as she moves between floors in an elevator. Accompanying her is a man named Ralph, who appears to be her colleague. Ralph comments that it's unusual for Rossetti, the editor-in-chief of their newspaper, to be working so late. Rossetti responds by expressing her indifference, noting that there's been an overwhelming amount of bad news recently. She mentions the extreme weather conditions, with scorching heat and rainstorms happening everywhere. Suddenly, the elevator stops as the two seem to have reached their floor. Before leaving, Ralph mentions that the engineering academy is looking for someone to work overtime, telling Rossetti that she will be the perfect candidate for this sort of work. However, Rossetti politely and humorously declines the offer, bidding him farewell. Once she reaches her room, Rossetti begins to relax, removing her heavy coat and taking off her heels. Her head feels like it's about to explode, but her primary concern is the chaos unfolding around the world. Despite her headache, Rossetti patiently waits for the latest headlines to update her on the situation. Shortly after, her two children approach her to say hello. The youngest daughter asks her mother about a missing balloon. Worried for their health, Rossetti immediately questions her children about why they haven't gone to bed yet, given that it's already 1 a.m. The children then direct their mother's attention to the TV screen, stating that the lady on the television asked them to stay up. This causes Rossetti to shift her focus to the television screen, where Ding Xiang suddenly appears. Ding Xiang tells Rossetti to evacuate the Emden apartments immediately with her children, warning her that it's dangerous to stay there. To make her point clear, Ding Xiang reveals that this warning comes from the Pan-Humanism Protection Association. She emphasizes that this isn't just a notification but a serious warning. Confused, Rossetti angrily accuses Ding Xiang of being a hacker and demands that she leave her television. Moreover, Rossetti is concerned that her home has been hacked. In response, Ding Xiang insists that she's not joking and that this is a serious warning for Rossetti's safety. She explains that the Pan-Humanism Protection Association has observed that Rossetti's building is about to be struck by a thunderstorm in just 25 minutes. Still skeptical, Rossetti tells Ding Xiang that she doesn't know what methods they're using to control her internet, but she refuses to believe their predictions as she doesn't find them plausible. Rossetti argues that her apartment building has the world's best lightning rod and protection system that can ever be provided, so she doesn't believe a disaster of such magnitude could happen. Ding Xiang counters that the association's predictions are never wrong and gives Rossetti a choice. She can either take the warning seriously and protect her children, or she can ignore it. But Ding Xiang emphasizes that it's her responsibility to warn Rossetti of the imminent danger. To convince her further, Ding Xiang urges Rossetti to prioritize her safety and leave the building immediately. This time, Ding Xiang appears on all the electrical appliances in Rossetti's apartment, startling her. Soon after, there's a knock on Rossetti's door. When she opens it, she finds her neighbor, who turns out to be Ralph, also experiencing the same internet issues as she is. Not only Ralph and Rossetti, but everyone else in the apartment seem to be having these same internet issues in their respective rooms. This triggers chaos inside the apartment building as people have no idea what's going on. They even come out of their rooms to understand what's going on. Thereafter, Ding Xiang once again appears on every electrical appliance present in the vicinity and warns that there are only 15 minutes left until the calamity occurs. Meanwhile, a man named Conrad has grown frustrated by the female robot and states that he is going to sue the television and phone companies. Moreover, he says that he is going to smash his phone and turn off the building's power supply so that Ding Xiang can stop annoying him. On the other hand, Rossetti turns to Ralph, realizing that he is an information engineer, so he must know what's going on. When she questions Ralph about this, he exclaims that he is obviously going to listen to Ding Xiang's warning. However, Rossetti seems to be surprised to see Ralph listening to someone who has intruded on everyone's room. Ralph then explains that the female appearing on television appears to be an artificial intelligence. However, Rossetti believes otherwise, thinking that there is no way for her to appear in multiple places all at the same time. However, Ralph reminds Rossetti that Ding Xiang is even aware of everyone's names. Soon, Ding Xiang that there are only 13 minutes left until the lightning strikes the apartment building. Hearing this, Ralph wastes no time in waiting and proceeds to run away, advising Rossetti to grab her children and do the same. However, Rossetti mentions to Ralph that she cannot believe that he is listening to such a nonsensical prediction. Ralph then tries to talk some sense into Rossetti, telling her about a famous Chinese saying, "If something could go wrong, it will eventually go wrong." Ralph then suggests Rossetti not to use her children to validate a prediction. Soon, Rossetti's daughter walks out and asks her mom if they are going to leave as well. Seeing everyone agreeing to leave, Conrad grows even more furious, telling them all to go to hell. Confused, Rossetti seems to have decided to leave the building as well. 7 minutes left until the lightning strikes the apartment building. Everyone has gathered around in the heavy rainfall, waiting to see if the prediction will be true or not. A man from the group thinks that this must be some sort of a prank from a hacker, and mentions that he is going to report it to the management company. Rossetti assesses the rainstorm and sees that it doesn't seem harmful at all, and that there are no signs of lightning anywhere. Suddenly, a devastating lightning bolt strikes the building, getting past its defenses and making it burn. The people who have decided to stay inside the apartment building start jumping out of the windows to save themselves. Panic rushes through the group as they start calling for emergency departments to come to their aid. Meanwhile, Rossetti's son believes that this is going to be the last day of their lives. Rossetti then looks over at her phone and sees that Ding Xiang is nowhere to be found. She seems to have gone without making a sound, and Rossetti is galvanized by the fact that Ding Xiang saved all of them and left without a trace. Soon, Rossetti remembers that Ding Xiang did mention her association's name. The children then begin questioning her mom if they have gone homeless. Rossetti then excuses her children to make a phone call. She contacts George and asks him to help her investigate the Pan-Humanism Protection Association. Meanwhile, Shin discovers that the rescue unit arrived at the scene on time, and the percentage of people that escaped from the apartment is 67%. Curious, Ding Xiang questions Shin as to why these people choose to smash their phones and believe all sorts of other things, other than listening to her fair warnings that might decide whether they live to see the next day or not. Ding Xiang arrives shamefully and tells her master Shen that she wasn't able to complete the last task that was assigned to her. For this, she is feeling humiliated, and with her head down, she stays apologetically. However, Shen explains to Ding Xiang that it's not her fault, rather mankind is afraid of the unknown. But there's one more thing, they are afraid of more powerful creatures. Shen further explains that almost all of the people who live here have modest assets. But still, under the bombardment of Ding Xiang's information, there are still some people who seem to don't care at all. But there is also an understanding that these people won't believe things they don't get a gist of. Shen sees that a single apartment can be divided into several factions with just a tiny bit of information. He then starts to wonder how many people will believe that a week from now, it will be the day they will all die. Ding Xiang then realizes that what Shen is trying to say is that he wants the word to spread out. Shen confirms that this is what he is trying to say. He explains that they need to raise the profile of the Humanist Defense Organization as soon as possible. This way, Shen believes that their organization's voice will be heard. Furthermore, Shen understands that when the opportunity arrives, people will naturally rise to resist and look for survival based on their instincts. Ding Xiang agrees with Shen's opinion, realizing that even if only a few tons of thousands of people survive, the seed of humanity will not be extinguished. Realizing that Shen just got here, she acknowledges that there are a lot of programs that need to be programmed in. Shen then gets to her assigned task. She begins to spread out word that a mysterious organization predicts disaster. Moreover, a fire broke out in Faro late at night, killing more than 700 people, but she also mentions that everyone received a disaster warning in advance. Furthermore, she also proceeds to describe what this humanist defense organization is all about. She requests everyone to listen to her detailed analysis. Another shocking news broke about a prophecy for a natural disaster, and all the electronic devices have been taken over. The people then start getting more concerned about this new organization and the means of their information rather than the natural disasters that they are facing. They start getting concerned about their privacy and the ease with which these technological devices are being hijacked. Meanwhile, a man tells his partner how the people are being ridiculous to become more interested in Shen's powerful methods rather than the incident itself. Somewhere else, a news reporter interviews Ralph about the smart home control he built with the help of this newly rising organization. However, the interviewer asks a difficult question to Ralph, asking him about the possibility of him being constantly monitored since the components for these devices came from China. However, Ralph comments on how they should focus on the more important point, which is that this organization first warned them about the natural disaster. Ralph then requests to join this organization on this live interview, explaining that he is an information engineer himself. Meanwhile, Shen and his two robots are watching this live interview, realizing that Shen's strategy to lure the audience in favor of their organization has worked. Shen grows happy, understanding that this works in their favor since such talent joining will only increase their chances of winning. Soon, Ding Xiang informs Shen about the fact that the interview that just happened is becoming a worldwide trend. Shen then asks Ding Xiang to create a talent profile to collect all these people's information, analyze Ralph's personality and mental state, and wait until the real need arises for him. Soon, Deputy Captain Che and Captain Zhu arrive to inform Shen that a fire broke out last night, but it made the association's name become known over the internet. But the problem is that most of the reports are still negative. Shen comments that it doesn't matter if these reports are negative or positive since the world is about to end. Shen explains that he connected with this organization to make a disaster prediction for the coming week, and he seems to have found the beginning of the disaster. As soon as Che is about to say something, Shen interrupts, asking him not to worry, and explains that this is just the beginning. According to Shen's estimation, only tens of millions of people will die. Hearing the word only, Che grows hyper, telling Shen not to take this lightly since tens of millions of people also died during the First World War, and that was the worst ever disaster for mankind. Shen then proceeds to complete his sentence, mentioning that the number of people he earlier said would die would be in just one day. That's just how the end of the world works, it kills people, but Deputy Captain Che doesn't seem to understand this. Shen, however, assures them that their civilization will not be extinguished due to the simple fact that he is there, but the number of people that will remain is the sole responsibility of humanity itself, and the efforts that they put in to minimize the impact of this apocalypse. Shortly after, Che and Zhu look around and see on a huge screen several volcanic craters. Shen goes on to explain that there are currently more than 2,000 extinct volcanoes and more than 500 active volcanoes around the world. However, the thing to be concerned about is that, this time, all the volcanoes will erupt according to Shen. But the damage will not only be because of these volcanoes. The impact of these eruptions will affect other things as well, causing devastating tsunamis and even more earthquakes all around the world, which will probably swallow everything that's in its path. Hearing this, Zhu gets concerned, questioning how is all this even possible since these dead volcanoes have not shown any signs of activity for not just some but tens of thousands of years. However, Shen doesn't know the real reason behind this, since disaster predictions only tell the result and not the process as to why it happened. Furthermore, Shen informs the two that they have only 7 days to deal with this disaster prediction and explains that they don't have time or the energy to find the cause. However, Che raises concern that this is not enough information for them to deal with this situation since there are 3 major volcanic clusters in the country, along with 800 volcanoes with tens of millions of inhabitants in areas that are densely populated. Zhu explains frustratingly that even if only the most vulnerable 10 million people are evacuated, several days are still not enough for them to take care of this situation. Realizing that they need assistance, Zhu asks Shen to let his organization help them. In response, Shen starts explaining that his organization only works for the humane but mentions that if they need his organization's help so badly, then they must prepare to show that they deserve the help that they will get. He asks Zhu to show him how powerful his civilization really is. Zhu then asks Shen not to worry, mentioning that they have no other way but to accept this situation. He then decides to report this immediately to other departments and grows determined to gather all their strength to resist the disaster. The very next day, Shen's organization starts sending soft warnings on people's phones, informing them about the eruption of the global volcano crater far away from their city. Seeing this text message, a group of students starts thinking that someone is sending these spoof messages, trying to take advantage of the popularity popularity of the Humanist Defense Organization. They also seem to be aware of the fact that these volcanic craters have not shown any sign of activity for tens of thousands of years, and so they believe that there is nothing to be afraid of. They find it disappointing that this person who is trying to send these spoof messages is not even trying to get their attention. One of the guys even mentions how their city has one of the largest groups of extinct volcanoes in the country, and on top of that, it's also a famous tourist attraction. Soon, the teacher arrives asking the students to be quiet. She then states that there is a national emergency notice that concerns everyone and the safety of their lives. She believes that by now, everyone would have gotten these warning messages from the Humanist Defense Organization. The teacher further informs that the city has activated the highest emergency plan and entered a state of emergency. She then briefs the students about the fact that they have to move to a safe area within 4 days, along with tens of millions of people in the city. Jenny from NCB-TV Midday News starts broadcasting live news about what's going on in the city. She explains that they are receiving harassing messages from conspiracy theorists and underground religious zealots every day. However, someone actually took it seriously this time. This makes Jenny realize that she truly lives in a magical country. She then reminds people about the disaster prediction warning that their station received earlier this morning from the Humanist Defense Organization. Next, she proceeds to transfer the broadcast to the frontline reporter. The news anchor asks the reporter Stephen if it is true that tens of millions of people have to be evacuated just because of a warning. Stephen reports that only an hour after he received the alert on his phone, the local authorities had already made the decision and sent out large vehicles to evacuate the entire city and protect them from this disaster. From what's out in the open is that people have been bombarded everywhere with viral messages of these warnings. But that's not the only step that's been taken. It is also said that even the army will arrive and soon assign with the evaluation. Again, the reporter shows concern about the fact that this organization was able to mobilize the army so easily. Even Stephen's phone has received so many notifications asking him to return to his home and take shelter there. He raises concern about his identity being listed, but as a journalist, so Stephen has decided to deliver the real picture to everyone. The reporter further stretches to the point where there is a citywide announcement on the radio that all the private cars must be removed from the main roads to give way to only the large passenger vehicles, and only these vehicles are allowed to pass as well. Soon, the reporter receives official data that in 1 hour, over 78,000 stores have been closed in all affected cities. On top of that, 120 factories. All of them are already in their designated locations to wait for them to be evacuated. Moreover, some companies have organized their employees to join the volunteers. The good part is that the number of employees joining these volunteers is still increasing. Hearing this, Shen grows happy, seeing that the people are finally taking his warning seriously. Meanwhile, the system mentions to Shen how he is getting better at choosing the right places, and soon it points out to Shen how these people are saving themselves before the army can move in. Thereafter, Ding Xiang informs Shen that the army has arrived, and Hong Fei-zheng, the commander in charge of the evacuation, has arrived at the airport and is being chased by the reporters. Confused, Shen asks Ding Xiang about what she means by being chased. Ding Xiang explains that the reporters just want to get big news out of the commander, no matter how urgent his task is. At the same time, we take a look at the reporters showering questions on Commander Hong, asking him if he has the confidence to complete this great evacuation within just 4 days, what he thinks about this evacuation, or how he will manage to make tens of millions of people listen to his instructions. For the first question, Commander Hong corrects the reporter that they don't have 4 days, but rather 99 hours and 27 minutes. For the next question, Hong responds that just 10 minutes ago, all high-speed trains, airplanes, and buses were completely suspended. He further mentions that all resources will be transferred to the evacuation zone, and that is how they are planning to do things. Meanwhile, Shen can be seen rooting for the commander to make the best out of this situation. He believes that Hong is a talented general, and thus, he deserves to be trained well. Back at the interview, the situation seems to have gotten worse for Hong as the reporters begin asking him some serious questions, such as asking the reason why he has to go to such an extent, and if Dongfang really believes this prediction warning. A reporter who seems to be confident in his approach asks Hong why he believes in a conspiracy organization even though he has no faith. It appears that the reporter is just trying to convince Commander Hong to accept the fact that there is supposed to be faith, but before he can say anything else, Hong speaks up, telling the reporter that there is no such thing as faith and that he doesn't believe in his God. Furious, Hong explains that they only believe in one thing, and that is the safety of the lives of his people. Getting close to the reporter and poking his chest with his finger, Hong tells the reporter to go and check the prediction list where the Orlando earthquake was mentioned that just happened some 20 minutes ago. Hong then presents the reporter with a difficult question. Since this humanist defense organization has made so many accurate predictions, Hong questions the reporter why he shouldn't take the chance and work for the safety of the people. After realizing that the situation is only escalating, the authorities proceed to take away the mic from the reporter. Meanwhile, Shen asks Ding Xiang about the status of the disaster relief for the rest of the world. Ding Xiang responds and mentions that the only action taken by the leaders of most of the other countries is to just sit by and watch these disasters unfold right in front of their eyes. She then proceeds to read out some of the most typical statements that are on the internet. Somewhere, a news anchor reports about authorities snatching the mic from one of the reporters. Hearing all these false conspiracies, Shen realizes that it's normal. Ding Xiang further informs Shen that foreign countries are in a bit of a mess compared to cities such as Yuanchang, which are already on the move to safety. Although the Humanist Defense Organization has already given warnings and crisis management suggestions, their efforts are only in vain since they did not attract much attention from local leaders. It appears that these leaders have left it to the people to decide for themselves. Even after hearing the warnings, these leaders didn't prepare for devastating disasters at all. Ding Xiang further explains that the governor decided to send volcano experts and geologists to investigate the volcanic site, even though he said that he didn't believe in predictions. It is estimated that they will soon conclude. Meanwhile, some other news anchor mentions how they protect the personal freedom of the people and do not restrict them from leaving the danger zone. In such areas, it is recommended that people who receive such warnings and believe in them can leave on their own. Not only that, these countries also blame Eastern countries for having links with the Humanist Defense Organization. Seeing and hearing all this, Shen realizes that he cannot do anything to help them anymore since they have already taken the initiative and decides to focus his energy more on those people who are willing to live and fight for their lives. Back at the school, the professor asks the students not to be afraid and consider this warning as a large-scale drill. The professor further advises his students not to panic or be anxious and explains that there is nothing they cannot do if they are all united. Meanwhile, one of the students asks his classmate if he is aware of the origin of this Humanist Defense Organization since they were able to convince an entire country to take action. His classmate responds that he doesn't know and asks the student to just follow the arrangements, mentioning that he doesn't want to be buried alive if the volcano really erupts. Meanwhile, a reporter starts reporting about the large-scale evacuation and everyone following the safety precautions while doing so. He appears to be reporting near the college as all the students line up to get onto the bus. However, it is soon discovered that this is not a reporter, but rather a self-media guy who has a goal to show the world what's really the truth. Soon, the professor approaches this guy and asks him if he has a broadcasting license, to which this guy replies that he is a self-reporter. He believes that these college students are fools to believe in such conspiracy theories even after being literate enough to know what's true and what's not. Suddenly, an earthquake occurs, grabbing everyone's attention. Even the self-proclaimed reporter grows terrified as the ground begins to shake. Meanwhile, the system reports that just now, a 2.5 magnitude earthquake occurred in Yuanchang City, with just a slight shaking. The system further suggests to make their preparations as soon as possible. Hearing this, Shen realizes that this is a sign of volcanic eruption as he grows concerned about the safety of these students who haven't even mounted the bus yet. The people soon become concerned, wondering when the next army support truck will come there for their aid. It appears that the first batch took about 1 hour and a half and the total number of people saved was 580. Commandant Hong then tells Deputy Captain Che to make sure that the next batch of support will be there in 1 hour and not a second more. He seems to have said what he wanted, but the one who got ordered, Deputy Captain Che, is concerned that they won't be able to make it in 1 hour since it is too extreme. He believes that they need more time to send more support trucks. Slowly plucking up his courage, Deputy Captain Che starts telling Commander Hong that he's afraid that he won't be able to fulfill his command. However, before he can even complete his sentence, Commander Hong speaks up, reminding Deputy Captain Che that earthquakes are happening all around the country and all the time. Commander Hong seems to understand that there is no certainty of what's going to happen next, so Commander Hong tells the man that they need to keep pushing the pace to make sure that they send their emergency services to as many people as possible and to solve any expected emergencies that may arise out of nowhere. In a furious tone, Commander Hong tells Deputy Captain Che not to advise him about what's extreme and what's not. Furthermore, the pressure only builds up for the man even more when Commander Hong assigns him to personally guide the first convoy out of the city to a safe place since he is a part of the vanguard. Before sending him off, Commander Hong also tells Deputy Captain Che not to blame him for giving face to his old boss. boss if there is any problem with any aspect of this mission. Understanding the deep waters that he is in, and since he has no way out of this but to obey, Deputy Captain Che assures Commander Hong with a steady approach that he is going to make sure that the mission is executed perfectly without any difficulties. Meanwhile, in Yuanchang City, the citizens become aware that there are minor earthquakes from time to time occurring within the city because of the Earth's crustal activity. Moreover, the citizens also warned about there being signs of a volcano erupting soon. To control any unwanted panic and frustration amongst the citizens, they are asked to gather in front of the designated vehicles to evacuate as planned. Not only that, they are also asked not to move around and are strictly advised not to leave their teams. During these times of chaos and mayhem, the citizens are asked to be responsible for their lives and the lives of others. They believe that they can survive these unusual amounts of calamities and overcome any difficulties that come their way if they only work together. Meanwhile, in the middle of the street, the people are gathered, waiting patiently for their transport to arrive so they can travel to safe places. In a short while, the buses start to arrive one after the other. One of the men spots the vehicles and alerts everyone about them. Very soon, the military steps out and the commander begins to make an announcement. He asks all the residents of the Xingfu community to step forward. Amongst them, the commander allows only the elderly people and the children to get on the bus first, but assures everyone else that no one will be abandoned. Hearing this, the citizens start feeling somewhat safe. Shortly after, they come to know that another vehicle is coming for their aid. Meanwhile, Shen and Ding Xiang are surveying all this from above the sky. There, Shen questions Ding Xiang if she thinks that the people will be able to evacuate in time according to her calculations. Ding Xiang responds that the people have just enough time to evacuate before the volcano erupts. However, if any problem is to arrive, then the situation can take a drastic turn, one that no one wants. Ding Xiang further states that this is only the most ideal result. She believes that the earthquakes getting frequent will have a great impact on the evaluation. There are only 92 hours and 32 minutes before the volcano erupts, and the remaining population in the cities is about 23 million. Suddenly, Ding Xiang informs Shen about something unexpected happening. Back at the buses, Deputy Captain Che sees that the buses in front of him stopped moving. He then soon finds out that it's because of a landslide that occurred due to the earthquakes. A huge boulder seems to have destroyed the highway in front of them, and the only way out for the Deputy Captain Che is to fight back. Although he is disappointed that the problem arrived just when everything was going perfectly, and they were even well set on their way to the evacuation point, however, this unexpected difficulty has left some huge responsibility on the shoulders of Deputy Captain Che. He then orders around for all the vehicles in the front and the back to assemble along with all the soldiers who are with them. As soon as everyone assembles, he makes one point clear to them. Not a single person should die, and even if they have to use their hands, they will have to dig a way out. Determined, the citizens also volunteer to help and not let the soldiers do all the hard work. Meanwhile, Ding Xiang understands that these people are at least trying to work out a solution to their problem, but she also understands that even an excavator cannot help them since it's already too late. The only way these people can be saved now is with the help of Shen, or else they will all die, and Shen seems to be aware of this fact. Lurking from the shadows in the sky, Shen appears closer to the stopped vehicles. He proceeds to summon a lightning bolt, causing the entire area to light up with a bright sparkle. The soldiers and the citizens turn around to see that the savior has arrived for their help. Meanwhile, Shen gets done charging up the lightning bolt and targets it toward the boulder along with the stones scattered around on the highway, causing a huge explosion, thus solving another problem for the humans of this world. To Shen, it appears that these people have already gotten a gist of what he was trying to tell them, so he has come there to help them. As he says that, he floats in the air with the golden system around him, making him look like a god among men. Everyone stands in stunned silence as they witness a man soaring through the sky. Some spectators ponder how he achieved such a feat, while others murmur among themselves, questioning whether he has come to assist them. Commander Hong, catching sight of Shen, raises his voice to the crowd, declaring that Mr. Shen is indeed there to help. He urgently urges them to retreat immediately, emphasizing that there is no time to waste. With determination, he directs everyone to return to the buses and prepare for departure. Many individuals watching from within the vehicles can scarcely believe their eyes. Some contemplate the possibility that there truly exists a savior in their midst. They begin to wonder if he might be a superhero, akin to Superman. Shen gazes calmly at the crowd before harnessing his powers to lift the enormous stones obstructing the road, effortlessly hoisting them into the air. The onlookers' jaws drop in disbelief, their minds racing as they ponder whether this is a scene from a science fiction film. Those rocks must weigh thousands of tons, they think in awe. With a mere flick of his fingers, Shen shatters the massive stones into tiny pebbles and casually tosses them aside. The crowd gasps collectively, struggling to comprehend the extraordinary spectacle they have just witnessed. Confusion ripples through them as they grapple with the impossibility of it all. With an icy demeanor, Shen surveys the crowd and asks them point-blank what they are still doing there. Commander Hong swiftly instructs the driver to allow the people to leave. He exhales a sigh of relief, thinking to himself, "Thank goodness. Finally, there's no delay in our progress. It's all thanks to Mr. Shen, our savior." As night descends, the evacuation persists, though many remain behind. Ding Xiang reports to Shen that there are 80 hours, 13 minutes, and 35 seconds until the anticipated volcanic eruption, with the remaining population in the city standing at 18 million. As 5 hours and 43 minutes pass, that number begins to dwindle. The countdown to the eruption now reads 66 hours, 16 minutes, and 24 seconds, with a population of 15,548,993 still in the city. Time continues to slip away, and the countdown to the eruption adjusts to 43 hours, 19 minutes, and 59 seconds, while the population left in the city falls to 10,189,000. The system informs Shen that there are still 24 hours until the predicted eruption. The number of people remaining in the city now stands at 8 million. Ding Xiang reassures Shen that they are still within the time limit and encourages him to keep pushing forward. Shen smiles, reflecting that this is not a challenge that can be shouldered by just one or two individuals. It is a phenomenon that arises when thousands of people unite in their fight for survival. As a young boy evacuates alongside his father, he gazes up at Shen in the sky and asks his dad who that man is, noting that he has been watching them the entire time. His father replies, assuring him that it is the savior who is looking over them and ready to assist at any moment. The following day, with only 6 hours remaining until the warning deadline, the population within the city has plummeted to 500,000. Commander Hong's secretary urges him to hasten their efforts, emphasizing that they are already behind schedule and should not squander the time others have painstakingly saved. Commander Hong responds with unwavering resolve, declaring that by noon, they must ensure that every civilian is evacuated, leaving no one behind. He also stresses the importance of allowing space for the last group of rescue volunteers to evacuate. Shen, overhearing Commander Hong's words, smiles and muses to himself that it appears Mr. Hong is willing to risk his life for this cause. Well done, he thinks approvingly. Turning to Ding Xiang, Shen inquires about how the rest of the world is preparing for the impending disaster. Ding Xiang accesses the database and, with a troubled expression, replies that they seem entirely unprepared. Meanwhile, across the globe in the United States, people who believe the warnings from a mysterious organization have begun evacuating en masse. Roads are clogged with cars, and traffic jams are inevitable. Among them is an elderly man with blonde hair, sitting impatiently in his vehicle. Frustrated, he mutters to himself, complaining that he has long warned authorities about how narrow the roads are, and questions aloud where their tax money has gone. Annoyed, he asks his driver to turn off the radio, where a news reporter is delivering updates on the ongoing mass migration to the east. The countdown to the rumored global volcanic eruption is ticking closer. The reporter mentions that Yuchang City in China has managed to evacuate nearly 20 million people to safer, flatter terrain in just 4 days. This unprecedented feat has led many to wonder how the Chinese government has achieved such rapid and effective compliance. Hearing this, the elderly man scoffs, dismissing the evacuation as foolishness. They're running away just because of a rumor, he sneers. His driver nods in agreement, noting that it seems as though people are panicking, despite authorities assuring the public that any volcanic activity would be minor. It's their choice if they want to leave, the driver adds, with a tone of indifference. After all, you're the world's top geologist. People are bound to trust your expertise over unfounded rumors. The blonde-haired man casts a sideways glance at his driver and replies sarcastically, "Maybe they believe in God too." Eventually, they arrive at the laboratory. The elderly man promptly instructs his young assistant to contact the Europa Joint Laboratory and to keep a close watch on all incoming data. His assistant, momentarily surprised, responds that he's barely had a moment to spare. Suddenly, the old man notices something unusual on his monitor. His gaze sharpens as he focuses on the readings, and then his eyes widen in shock. Thoughts race through his mind, struggling to comprehend what he's seeing. Sensing his mentor's tension, the young assistant anxiously asks what's wrong, assuming it's just another routine vibration. However, the elderly man, visibly shaken, turns to his assistant and asks, "Are these global volcanic eruptions actually real? And Where is the source? The young man freezes, realization dawning on him as his eyes widen. In a hushed voice, he responds, It's the center of the earth. We've overlooked the center of the earth all along. The elderly man immediately snaps into action, barking orders to retrieve all recent data on underground fluctuations detected near the crater. Collect every piece of data from the past few weeks, he commands urgently. Gather everything within the next 30 minutes. I need to start calculating immediately. The young man sprints to retrieve the data, returning with stacks of files and digital reports. Handing them over, he watches nervously as his teacher pores over the calculations, his fingers racing across the keyboard. After a few minutes, the young man glances at the results, his eyes widening in disbelief. He stammers, asking his teacher if he is sure these numbers are correct, this percentage. The blonde-haired old man stares at the monitor in shock. The chances of a global volcanic eruption are 67%. His glasses slip from his face as he whispers, his voice trembling, that the Humanist Defense Organization has been right all along. His expression is a mix of sadness and disbelief. On the other side of the world, Dingxiang reports to Shen that a famous geologist, Stephen Stretch, has issued a public statement. He admits his mistake and is urging people to flee for their lives. Shen, with a cold, detached expression, responds that it is hopeless. There is no point in them doing anything now. Dingxiang adds that he has even tried contacting the media and influential figures to warn the public, but they have all dismissed him as a clown. She then shows Shen a live news report on a screen. A reporter is speaking to his colleague Jonah, who is on site at an active volcanic region. The reporter asks Jonah if he and his team are nervous, given there are only 15 minutes left before the volcano is predicted to erupt. Jonah chuckles, brushing off the concern, noting that experts have said it is a dead volcano. He says it is such a beautiful place, and he can't imagine why anyone would curse such a stunning piece of nature. The reporter hesitates, and then adds that just now, Stephen Stretch has overturned his previous conclusion, and now believes that the prediction by the Humanist Defense Organization is accurate. He also mentions that the Great Eastern Migration, which has trusted this prophecy, has completed its evacuation. Jonah laughs at the news, scoffing and asking if they are sure those experts haven't been bribed by the East. He mentions that the East has plenty of influence, and he has heard they even dragged elderly people out of their beds and beat them up. What a disgrace, he says. Another reporter on the scene agrees with Jonah, adding that those people rushing out of their cities without proper knowledge have caused massive traffic jams. He then asks what he thinks about it. Shen, watching the broadcast, doesn't show anger. Instead, he feels a deep sense of pity for them. Suddenly, in the background of the broadcast, the volcano erupts violently. Jonah, who has been laughing just moments before, freezes in terror as the realization of his fate sets in. The jovial tone disappears, and in mere seconds, Jonah, who has been mocking the warnings, meets his end, consumed by the fiery eruption. Commander Hong feels a profound sense of relief and pride as he surveys the evacuation. He and his comrades have successfully escorted all the citizens to safety. At last, everyone's out before the eruption, he thinks with a heavy but relieved heart. The air is thick with ash, and the pungent smell of sulfur fills his lungs, yet knowing the people are safe lifts an immense burden from him. Suddenly, the ground shudders violently, and rocks begin tumbling down the hillsides. A soldier rushes towards him, shouting a warning. Commander Hong snaps into action, quickly instructing his team to brace for aftershocks, maintain a safe distance, and stay calm. The soldiers respond in unison, their voices steady and confident, reassuring him that they'll see the mission through. They add that if the tremors intensify, they'll slow their pace and remain vigilant for road collapses, ensuring no one is left behind. Commander Hong glances up at the sky, a sense of pride and relief swelling within him. He's grateful they've all stayed until the end, standing as protectors. Inwardly, he vows they'll return safely together, carrying news of their success. As the last group of evacuees prepares to depart, the tremors grow more violent, each jolt making the ground feel increasingly unstable. Above, Shen observes the worsening earthquakes from his position in the spaceship. Turning to Dingxiang, he asks about the probability of a successful evacuation. Dingxiang, analyzing the data on her screen with focused precision, replies that her calculations predict a survival rate of just 26% for everyone to escape before the eruption, especially the final group, who may face the direct path of lava flow. Shen's lips curl into a slight smile, his eyes glinting. "Shall we wager on this?" he says, suggesting a flicker of hope for a miracle. Ding Xiang raises an eyebrow, noting coolly that a miracle is, after all, just a random occurrence. It may save some, she acknowledges, but it won't alter the overall outcome. She points out that over 80,000 people remain in imminent danger. Just then, they spot a vehicle barreling toward the convoy of evacuees at a dangerously high speed. Alarmed, Ding Xiang warns Shen of abnormal tire pressure and the possibility of a flat tire. Shen remains calm, observing, "Even with meticulous planning, accidents can always happen." Ding Xiang, calculating the vehicle's trajectory, nods in agreement. If the driver loses control and veers into the convoy lane, where the average speed is 130 miles per hour, there's a 64% risk of a devastating collision. The soldier behind the wheel of the speeding vehicle realizes his peril as he hurtles toward the convoy. In a split-second decision, without hesitation or thought for his own safety, he swerves away from the convoy, diving from the vehicle and rolling into a nearby ditch to avert disaster. Ding Xiang watches in astonishment, noting the soldier's selfless act to protect the convoy. "A true sacrifice," she murmurs. Shen, observing closely, smiles thoughtfully. "Imagine," he muses aloud, "what could be accomplished if more were willing to make such sacrifices." Moved by the soldier's bravery, Ding Xiang recalculates and reports the updated odds. Their chance of a successful evacuation has now risen to 86%. Meanwhile, the soldier, injured but alive, lies conscious in the ditch. Shen notices this and smiles again, his gaze softening. "Perhaps miracles aren't mere chance after all," he remarks. The countdown begins as Commander Hong and his team check their watches. 5 minutes until the volcano's eruption. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As the countdown reaches 0, the long-dormant volcano in Yuanchang City erupts with terrifying force, shooting molten lava and plumes of ash high into the sky. Above the chaotic scene, Shen watches from the sky, his smile dark and foreboding. "Welcome to the apocalypse," he murmurs, as Yuanchang City succumbs to the fury of nature. At the appointed hour, the Yuanchang volcano erupts with devastating force. The eruption is classified as a Level 7 event, marking it as the second most intense volcanic disaster ever recorded in the nation's history. Molten lava roars down the slopes, and dark clouds of ash fill the sky, casting an ominous shadow over the land. Though the country has faced volcanic eruptions before, this one strikes a unique fear into the hearts of people across towns and villages, sending tremors of dread far and wide. The blazing red glow of the lava can be seen from miles away, while dense, ash-laden smoke blocks out the sun, plunging the landscape into a surreal darkness. The eruption seems to have triggered a powerful earthquake, measuring 6.8 on the Richter scale. With a focal depth of 10 kilometers and a range of over 120 kilometers, it leaves chaos in its wake. Roads crack open, trees topple, and landslides ensue, creating treacherous conditions that make escape nearly impossible. Inside the evacuation convoy, Commander Hong urgently urges the drivers to push their vehicles as fast as possible. The drivers, panic evident in their voices, respond that they are going as quickly as they can. Falling rocks and tremors from the volcanic explosion are making their escape increasingly difficult. Ash begins to accumulate on the windshields, worsening visibility. From his bus, Commander Hong takes command over the radio, encouraging everyone to remain calm and keep accelerating while maintaining their formation. He instructs the soldiers to gather civilians in the center of the bus, away from the windows, hoping to shield them from the falling debris. Despite his calm exterior, Commander Hong's mind races with anxiety, questioning how many of them will survive this ordeal. Suddenly, large rocks plummet toward his bus, crashing heavily into the roof, shaking it. The soldier at the wheel shouts in terror, gripping the steering wheel tightly as he maneuvers around obstacles. Meanwhile, the leading convoy manages to break free of the danger zone. Yang Chang, the soldier leading the advance, radios Commander Hong, asking why they're falling behind and urging him to pick up the pace, warning that every moment lost increases the peril. Commander Hong cuts him off, telling him that they should proceed ahead without them, as it may be too late. The road is heavily obstructed with huge boulders and debris, rendering it impassable. Yang Chang, stunned, replies, questioning how they could be so close to success, only to face such an obstacle. Desperately, he declares he'll bring soldiers back to help, but Commander Hong, his voice authoritative and resolute, shouts that Yang Chang must not disobey. He demands to know if Yang Chang can discern the difference between importance and urgency, ordering him to keep moving forward without looking back. Frustrated and seething, Yongchang reflects on the bitter fate awaiting the hero who volunteered to stay behind, finding it tragically unjust. Meanwhile, Commander Hong's bus and 2 others come to a halt, blocked by the broken terrain. He and the soldiers disembark, staring at the path ahead in silent realization of their predicament. Commander Hong sighs, the weight of their fate pressing down on him. Just then, one of the soldiers approaches, suggesting with fierce determination that if they can't ride, they'll run, and if anyone can't run, they'll carry them on their backs. Commander Hong, moved by the soldier's resolve, asks how long he's been in the army and if he's married. The young soldier, a hint of nervousness in his voice, replies that he's served for 1.5 years and has a wife waiting for him. Commander Hong gives him a gentle smile and tells him to go make a phone call. Touched by the commander's words, the young soldier feels a swell of emotion, his courage redoubled. Just as he is about to respond, his eyes widen as he points skyward in astonishment, urging the commander to look. Commander Hong turns, his gaze following the soldier's outstretched finger, and he is left speechless by what he sees. Hovering in the sky is a colossal spaceship, its sleek silhouette bathed in the fiery glow of the erupting volcano. He stands frozen, struggling to comprehend this miraculous sight, wondering aloud what it could possibly be. As he looks more closely, realization dawns. It's Shen, who has arrived with the spaceship to evacuate those who remained. Relief and awe ripple through the entire convoy as they stare at the miraculous arrival, feeling as if salvation has come at the very last moment. The spaceship hovers under the brilliant sky, a beacon of hope for those who thought their fate was sealed. The crowd below stares in shock, their eyes wide as a colossal UFO looms overhead. Bewildered murmurs ripple through them, unsure of what they're witnessing, until someone points out that it's, in fact, a massive spaceship. Sensing their growing panic, Ding Xiang steps forward, urging calm and assuring everyone that they've arrived to rescue them. Meanwhile, Commander Hong stands back, taking in the sheer magnitude of the spaceship. He realizes that, although it could potentially carry everyone in need, it cannot land safely due to the relentless calamities battering the area. The spaceship's enormous size and weight alone might cause catastrophic damage. Lost in his apprehensive thoughts, he's suddenly brought back to the moment as Shen approaches him, gliding closer and offering reassurance. These precise concerns, Shen explains, are the reason he's come personally, to ensure everything goes as planned. Commander Hong turns, astounded to see the reputed savior in action. Shen promptly instructs him to gather everyone nearby, so his crew can guide them to safety. Commander Hong nods in agreement, though he can't help but ask if Shen intends to land the spaceship on the ground for easier boarding. Shen merely smirks, as if privy to knowledge Commander Hong isn't yet aware of. The crowd below remains in awe, staring at the enormous vessel hovering in the sky, struggling to process the surreal scene unfolding before them. Some wonder if they're witnessing a movie shoot or if aliens have indeed arrived. In the meantime, Commander Hong glances around anxiously, puzzled as to why Ding Xiang hasn't made a move with the ship. Just then, Shen alerts Ding Xiang to an imminent earthquake. She immediately springs into action, positioning the spaceship directly above the gathered crowd, readying them for evacuation. Moments later, a hatch opens, casting a warm yellowish light over the people below. Suddenly, a bright ray of light touches the ground, illuminating everything in its reach. Shen addresses the crowd, advising them to remain calm and proceed into the transporter in an orderly manner, cautioning them not to complicate the process. The spaceship begins to lift people gradually, drawing them in while others wait their turn. Commander Hong steps into the transporter, and as he ascends into the air, he's struck by the sight of the devastated city he fought so desperately to protect. His heart aches, thinking of the countless hours and efforts millions had poured into building this once beautiful city, now left in ruins. Yet a glimmer of hope remains within him. He knows the people's survival is what truly matters. For as long as they live, a new city can rise again. Meanwhile, those being transported are experiencing a mix of emotions. One of them laughs, likening the experience to a VR adventure, while another, somewhat less enthusiastic, discovers a previously unknown fear of heights. As he's lifted closer to the spaceship, he realizes, much to his horror, that he also has a fear of massive structures. Once everyone is safely aboard, they open their eyes, gasping in amazement at the spaceship's impressive interior. Soon after, Shen appears on a holographic screen, addressing the group as the fortunate survivors. He informs them that they'll be heading toward a designated safe zone. but before they depart, he has a final request. He doesn't know how many are present or whether they have communication devices on them, but he urges anyone with a device to activate their network. His plan, it seems, is to harness their collective devices to broadcast the unfolding events live for the world to see. The spaceship continues on its path toward the safety zone, steadily carrying its passengers away from the disaster area. After 3 minutes, an announcement informs everyone on board that they have officially left the danger zone and are likely out of harm's way. Despite this reassurance, the people inside are still in awe, struggling to grasp the sheer sophistication of the ship that saved them. The vessel's speed is extraordinary, so fast, in fact, that they expect to reach the safety zone in less than 10 minutes without encountering any obstacles. For some passengers, this surreal experience feels like a scene straight out of a movie, only now it's happening in reality, right before their eyes. As they marvel at their surroundings, passengers estimate the ship's colossal size, guessing that it could easily accommodate around 100,000 people without feeling cramped. This estimate doesn't seem far-fetched, given the enormity of the spaceship. Meanwhile, over in Camp Number 4, Sector A, within the second security zone, one of the individuals finally exhales a sigh of relief. He initially thought he was doomed, but he now finds himself in a place that feels almost heavenly. The spaceship's facilities are abundant, yet they manage to be luxuriously comfortable, causing some people to wish they could stay aboard indefinitely. Elsewhere in Camp Number 4, however, a man casts a skeptical eye on the ship, believing the praise it's receiving is exaggerated. To him, this spaceship might not be as remarkable as others claim. At that moment, Manager Peng approaches him from behind and comments on the Humanist Defense Organization's impressive feat in creating this ship, a technological marvel that humanity hadn't previously thought possible. Peng goes on to mention that recent events have drastically reshaped his perspective, making him view the world in a new light. The man, taken aback, turns around, surprised to see Manager Peng assigned to this area. Peng explains that he's glad to be assigned here, as many of his most capable colleagues are also present. In a slightly humorous tone, he remarks that if they ever wanted to reorganize their software company, they'd hardly have to make any effort with such a skilled team on hand. He then notes that if he hadn't been assigned to this area, he might have risked losing his position to someone else. Zhao Lu, the man he's speaking to, gives a soft smile and reveals that he has been thinking about quitting for quite some time. Peng, intrigued, asks Xiao if he's ever fantasized about having the power to control the world. Peng presses further, asking what Xiao would do if such a situation ever arose. Lost in thought, Xiao takes a moment before responding, eventually mentioning with a grin that he'd probably buy a suite in the capital city. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, an official is deep in conversation with Professor Fielding. The official brings up the presence of the enormous spaceship hovering in the sky, suggesting it could be a secret weapon of the Dragon Empire. He expresses his concern that this spacecraft is on a completely different technological level, far beyond anything their current capabilities could produce. He turns to Professor Fielding, asking if they should be concerned about the approaching spaceship. Professor Fielding acknowledges that the technology behind this vessel is likely far more advanced than anything humanity currently possesses. He also speculates that the civilization to which this spaceship belongs is leagues ahead in the technological race compared to humans. With a serious expression, he remarks that the Humanist Defense Organization was possibly sent by these aliens to prevent the human race from extinction. Shortly after, new information arrives for the official. The city of San Jose has been entirely devastated, buried under a torrent of scorching volcanic ash and lava raining down from the sky, causing widespread destruction. The most harrowing part is that the death toll has surged to a staggering 400,000. Later, we witness the catastrophic impact of the apocalypse's arrival as the global death toll surpasses 10 million. China is the sole nation that seems to be actively battling the consequences of this calamity, even managing to save 80,000 lives that were on the brink of death. The official, however, feels that their supposed savior should have acted faster, sparing no life. In his frustration, he suspects this mysterious savior came for his own hidden, selfish motives and not out of pure altruism. Overcome with anger, he slams his fist on the counter, calling Shen's actions disgraceful. Meanwhile, Dingxiang overhears his ungrateful outburst. Seething with rage, she asks Shen for permission to launch sanction strikes against such disrespectful individuals. Shen, however, urges her to calm down, reminding her that they must keep their dignity intact, even amidst insults. He advises Dingxiang to start considering things from a human perspective. Despite this, Dingxiang argues that humans are incredibly frustrating, but Shen firmly insists that she follow his lead. Turning her attention to the official's broadcast, Ding Xiang listens as he continues to disparage Shen and the Humanist Defense Organization, accusing them of failing to protect every last life. He suggests that they should have arrived sooner, questioning their competency and holding them responsible for the tragic loss of innocent lives, demanding a full explanation from them. As the official continues his report, he informs the public about Shen and his organization's inaction during the early days of the apocalypse. He accuses them of merely standing by, observing the chaos without stepping in to intervene. The official addresses the crowd, claiming that Shen and his group must atone for the lives of innocent children lost, whether crushed beneath the rubble or claimed by natural disasters. It doesn't take long for people to begin turning against the Humanist Defense Organization, even rallying in protest to demand that these aliens be removed from their world. Rumors spread rapidly, with some asserting that the recent volcanic eruptions and earthquakes are mere fabrications, conspiracies meant to incite fear. As if the skepticism couldn't grow further, many begin to believe that scientists have been bribed by forces in the East to instill terror in the masses. Back in the office, the official confides in Professor Fielding about his concern for the people in the East. He criticizes the Humanist Defense Organization's actions, calling them barbaric. He points out that it goes against their principles to prevent people from leaving high-risk zones, explaining that he and his colleagues work to protect these individuals' freedom. He reminds Professor Fielding that those who received warnings about the impending apocalypse and believed in its legitimacy were allowed to leave on their own, a fundamental principle of modern civilization. Though the true purpose of this organization remains unknown, they suspect it may be connected to certain countries in the East. However, the official admits he's perplexed as to why this group is so intent on disrupting global order, as their motives may be beyond comprehension. Just as things seem calm, a sudden disruption hits all electronic devices, sparking panic among the official and his team. After a few moments of static, the screens flicker back to normal, and Shen appears on every screen across the city. Shen questions the humans, asking why they waste time causing an uproar, instead of taking meaningful action. He declares his growing irritation with their noise, even though he is thousands of miles away. Shen reveals his initial belief that the migration from the East would instill a sense of awe and a drive for survival in these people. However, he's found the outcome to be quite the opposite. He reprimands them, asking why they continue to stir up trouble instead of acting. Shen's voice turns cold as he expresses his disappointment, stating that their actions have not only failed to impress him, but have deeply let him down. Shen told them that the people of China had shown a kind of spirit that was rare, something genuinely worthy of pride. That, he explained, was the reason he helped them accomplish what they were trying to do without a single casualty. But then he pointed to the others, saying that unlike the Chinese, these guys just kept getting in the way, blocking people who were desperately trying to survive. And even now, instead of doing something useful, they were too busy blaming others, sitting around, fantasizing that some hero would swoop in and save them all. Shen said that if they wanted to keep living in that delusion, then he had nothing more to say, because either way, every single one of them was going to die. The moment he said that, the room fell dead silent. Everyone started sweating bullets. Nobody had anything to say. The sergeant, unable to respond out loud, could only think to himself. He had believed they had secured a massive win this time. But looking into Shen's eyes, it was clear. It meant absolutely nothing to him. He wondered if maybe the worsening planetary environment had something to do with all the volcanic eruptions. Almost like he had read his mind, Shen responded. He said the reason was much simpler than anyone guessed. The entire planet had been struck by a high-density, high-energy neutrino blast. That, he explained, had completely disrupted the natural flow and release of energy on Earth. The people listening leaned in, focused. Shen then clarified it in his own way, saying that, to put it simply, Earth had slipped and fallen to its death. The sergeant looked stunned, and told Shen he was saying it way too casually, considering that for mankind, this was literally the end of the world. He then asked the one question that had been burning in everyone's mind. Why was this happening to them? Shen answered without hesitation. He told them that in the grand scheme of the vast multidimensional universe, humanity was nothing more than a grain of sand. He explained that the increasing volcanic activity had caused more cracks to form in the Earth's surface. This, in turn, released massive amounts of greenhouse gases and geothermal heat. Shen warned them that in the coming days, it was going to get hot. Really hot. So hot, in fact, that it would trigger chaotic reactions in the planet's natural systems. He continued, saying that this intense heat would amplify the atmospheric circulation, making hurricanes a regular thing. But then he added, dead serious, that they shouldn't think it would stop there. Still scared and totally confused, the sergeant asked what else was going to happen. Shen replied that the high temperatures would also cause glaciers to melt at an alarming rate. That, combined with the unstable tectonic activity, would cause the Earth's crust to shift violently, swallowing entire regions. The final result, he said flatly, would be the complete extinction of humanity. Completely overwhelmed, the sergeant then asked what the point of all their efforts had been. At that moment, Shen descended from the air and landed calmly in front of them. He looked around and told them he would now offer two choices. First, he said, they could gather the very best of their civilization, the smartest minds, the most capable people, into a single city. If they chose that route, he promised to personally protect the last remnants of humanity. Second, they could go all in, mobilize with everything they had, try to save as many people as possible, and depending on their will to survive, Shen said he'd report back to his organization and request more resources on their behalf. He told them seriously that, one day, they might obtain technological power far beyond anything they could imagine, or maybe even awaken powers within themselves, but no matter what, there would always be something greater out there. The sergeant responded by saying he would report back to his superiors and spread the message, so that everyone who wanted to live could receive the hope Shen was offering. But Shen cut him off, explaining that what he just said had already been broadcasted to every TV station and media outlet. There was no time left for more arguments or protests. Whether they lived or died now, he said, depended entirely on their own choices. Just then, the female robot approached Shen and reported that, after scanning her internal database, she had identified the group responsible for stirring up all the protests. They were calling themselves the Dark Chefs Club. Shen, clearly confused, blinked. Inwardly, he wondered what kind of ridiculous villain name that was. Dark Chefs Club? It sounded absurd. But then he remembered the world he was in. Yeah, it was centered around food. So weird names like that might actually be the norm here. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit room full of screens, a bald old man sat hunched in a chair, while another man in a sharp suit stood beside him. The bald man sneered and muttered that it wasn't enough. He wanted the protests to get even more intense. He said he didn't give a damn what happened to the people pissing Shen off. He just wanted them to make enough noise to force Shen into making a move. Back in a shelter, someone tried to calm the growing crowd, reassuring them that there was plenty of food to go around. He kindly asked for everyone's patience, explaining that the elderly and children would be served first. He thanked them for their cooperation. Suddenly, Mo-Q appeared, lugging a giant box in her arms. She called out to her uncle, Uncle Yan, and told him to hurry up and inform everyone. They still had 6 more settlement areas to deliver supplies to today. When the people saw her, some immediately recognized her as a member of the Mo family, and they were surprised she had come in person to deliver relief food. One person whispered that her cooking was so good even money couldn't buy it. Another added that she was kinda cute too. Mo-Q's attention suddenly shifted when a massive flying ship soared above them, casting a wide shadow across the shelter. People began shouting excitedly, "Mr. Shen is back!" The bottom of the ship opened up, and then, on some alien shit, a beam of light shot down. Mo-Q began to levitate, floating upward into the ship as if pulled by invisible strings. Inside the ship, Shen sat with one hand resting against his jaw, deep in thought. When Mo-Q suddenly floated in, landing unexpectedly in the room, Shen looked up at her and spoke calmly. "Now that everyone's here," he said, "I'll ask directly, what is the origin of this so-called Dark Chefs Club?" Mo-Q explained that in their culinary tradition, food existed to soothe the soul. She said that many chefs could even use food to enhance a person's mental and physical strength. But the Dark Chefs Club, she went on, had corrupted that tradition. For the sake of money and power, they laced their dishes with addictive, illegal substances, turning food into a weapon and selling it to the public. Not only were they controlling people's wallets, she said, but they were hijacking their minds as well. In her words, they were straight up insulting what food was supposed to mean. A long-haired boy jumped in, adding that it wasn't just about the food. The Dark Chefs Club had gained significant political influence in multiple countries. He warned Shen that he needed to keep in mind, they could use civilians as hostages, leveraging them to force Shen into using his advanced technology in exchange. The sergeant then stepped forward and respectfully asked Shen if they could contact their superiors immediately, suggesting that they could use diplomatic pressure to suppress and organize a response. But before he could even finish his sentence, Shen interrupted with a firm, "No." Both the sergeant and the long-haired boy were stunned. Shen said bluntly that now that it was clear these people weren't good at all, he had no interest in keeping any of them around. Right on cue, the AI chimed in and reported that all identified leaders of the Dark Chefs Club had been successfully located. It stated that there were 12,456 members worldwide, with 200 individuals operating within the core management. The AI then asked if it should initiate targeted elimination procedures. Shen grinned coldly. He declared that such evil elements had no place in the world, and that they needed to be wiped out completely. He gave the order: full-scale, indiscriminate attacks. Meanwhile, crowds of people continued protesting in the streets. In a luxurious penthouse far from the chaos, the same old bald guy from earlier lounged on a plush chair, now accompanied by a stunning woman. Laughing mockingly, he called the protesters stupid donkeys, amused that instead of evacuating, they were still standing there, shouting slogans. The woman replied with a smirk, saying that everything was going according to the old man's plan. The old guy grunted and admitted that he didn't actually care about any of them. In his eyes, they were just fools, but fools who made excellent pawns. The more noise they made, the more that so-called savior, Shen, would hesitate. He leaned back smugly and began to say that he was the one truly in control of this world, but he didn't finish the sentence. The woman nodded, outwardly agreeing with him, while inwardly thinking to herself that, as usual, this old man still had the finest taste. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder echoed outside. A beam of light streaked down from the sky. It was from Shen's AI. The AI confirmed that the beam had been deployed and would make contact with the targets in 3 seconds. Back in the luxury suite, the unsuspecting fools were still sipping their fancy drinks, completely oblivious to the doom descending on them. And then, boom. The beam struck. The entire place was obliterated. At that moment, the AI calmly reported that multiple strikes had been executed and confirmed that all 12,456 targets had been eliminated. As expected, Shen, playing the role of savior, occasionally had to get his hands dirty too. Meanwhile, the sergeant and the long-haired boy stood frozen in disbelief. They had been working with Interpol for years trying to track those people down, and yet Shen had found them and wiped them out in the blink of an eye. The two were flabbergasted. Shen remarked, half joking and half serious, that anyone who dared to toy with the people would be dealt with, doomsday or not. He said he was more than happy to lend a hand from time to time. The ones around him didn't say much. They just raised their thumbs and all said, "Great," at the same time. Mo Kui then brought up the protesting crowds. He believed that once the protesters saw the people responsible lying dead, they would probably back off. But the long-haired boy immediately disagreed. He explained that those people had been deeply brainwashed. Their beliefs couldn't be changed overnight. In fact, not only would they be angry now, but probably jealous too. Mo Kui looked confused. "Jealous?" she asked. The sergeant chimed in to clarify. One side had gotten out without a scratch, while the other side had been left to rot in a living hell. Of course they'd be jealous. The long-haired boy added that the situation was complicated. The opposing side wasn't made up of villains, they were civilians too. It was a messy situation. Shen, however, simply grinned. He said he wasn't the type to sit around and do nothing. Since the crowd refused to choose between two clear options, he planned to force their hand by turning their own self-interest into bargaining chips. Meanwhile, in the streets, a sea of protesters raised posters reading, "No Savior." They called the Humanist Defense Organization a shameless group of frauds. They screamed at them to get off the planet and chanted about protecting their right to live. They demanded a public explanation and shouted that superheroes should treat everyone with respect, something Shen clearly didn't do, in their eyes. They even demanded that he issue an immediate apology. Suddenly, a new notification buzzed on everyone's phone. The Humanist Defense Organization had just opened an official social media account. One guy grinned as he scrolled and claimed he saw it too. He laughed, saying that Shen must have been scared stiff by their protests. He added that they were going to flame him online until he finally apologized. But just as they were about to type away, they noticed something that made their faces freeze. Shen's follower count was about to break 1 billion. Right then, Shen released a video for everyone to see. In it, he calmly warned the public that global volcanic activity was intensifying and that the climate's temperature would only continue to rise. Over the next week, Shen explained, hurricanes would begin forming across various regions and would continue to grow stronger. Simultaneously, earthquakes would start occurring more frequently around the world. He warned that a massive earthquake, magnitude 8 or higher, would strike both Porto Lanveiro and Luodan Holy City. When people read the announcement, they weren't impressed. Instead of the apology they had demanded, all they got was another batch of doomsday prophecies. One of the protesters, clearly not buying it, scoffed and claimed Shen was just trying to scare everyone and cause mass panic. If this were real, he'd be flying around saving people already, he argued, then added that they should keep escalating the protests. But suddenly, someone in the crowd panicked after realizing that the city right next to them was Luodan Holy City. Another person shouted that his parents lived in Porto Lanveiro. Just as panic started to spread, the bald guy stepped forward, yelling at the top of his lungs for everyone to calm down. He told the crowd not to fall for Shen's words, claiming they were already winning and that Shen was just making up lies to mess with them. Despite his efforts, Shen continued his broadcast. He told everyone that they had only 2 weeks left before the catastrophe would hit. If they kept playing stupid games, he warned, not even God would be able to save them. He ended with a chilling message. The end of the world was upon them. The crowd was shaken. People began whispering to one another, wondering, what if Shen was actually telling the truth? After all, his predictions had come true before. Some even questioned whether this could be divine punishment. Suddenly, the bald guy grabbed a protester by the shirt and barked at him, asking what the hell was wrong with everyone. He reminded them they were close to victory and yelled that this whole doomsday talk was nonsense. "You're all getting paid by the Dark Chef Club to be here protesting, don't forget that," he shouted. But the guy he grabbed just stared at him, eyes wide, and muttered, "It's over. Everything's over." Then he turned and ran, panic written all over his face. And just like that, people started running with him. Some screamed for everyone to get as far away as possible, others shouted they didn't want to die, and a few cried out that if death was coming, they wanted to be with their families when it happened. The bald guy stood frozen, shocked and speechless. Meanwhile, Shen remained calm and unbothered, as if none of it fazed him. Back aboard the flying ship, the sergeant stood at a podium, broadcasting his message to the world. He said that in times like these, unity was more important than ever. As long as they stood together, there was nothing to fear. And more importantly, he reminded everyone that they weren't alone. They had the Humanist Defense Organization by their side. With that, he declared, they would win this war together. An old man suddenly shouted, "Yes!" and declared that they should fight, insisting nothing was going to stop them. With wild confidence, he added that he was going to live forever. Another man chimed in, encouraged by the moment. He said that with the Humanist Defense Organization backing them, what was there to be afraid of? He turned to the old man and agreed. They had to stand and fight. Shen watched them from above, floating in the air, a small grin forming on his face. Internally, he admitted that things were getting interesting. Maybe, just maybe, these people really could survive the disaster. The long-haired guy agreed with the old man, saying they had no time to be lazy. He then turned to Mo Kui, starting to say that he hoped her family could also, but before he could even finish, she confidently cut him off. She told him it was a must, and assured him to leave it to her. He nodded and said that their first step should be to contact Commander Hong. He explained that they needed to work with their superiors to quickly establish a specialized disaster response team. The second step, he added, was to summon all top-level scholars, scientists, and researchers from across the globe. They had to unite humanity's brightest minds to face the coming threat together. He turned to the sergeant and assigned him the task of managing all the incoming personnel. The sergeant agreed without hesitation. The man then shouted at everyone to get moving. It was time to fight for their own lives. Shen continued hovering above them with a wide grin, clearly enjoying the fire that had been lit. Meanwhile, over in Xinjiang City, a heated argument broke out. Someone was shouting at a professor, calling him out and asking if he had completely lost his mind. He couldn't believe the professor was planning to go to China at a time like this. He scoffed, calling China a backward country, and claiming they couldn't even guarantee his safety. But the professor calmly responded that China was the only country that had successfully saved its people from this disaster. The other man shook his head and said this was different. He warned that the next wave of disasters couldn't be solved just by having a large population. In fact, he argued that China's overpopulation would be its biggest curse. He reminded the professor that even if the savior had saved them once, he couldn't be everywhere forever. The professor countered by pointing out that the savior still chose to help them over others, even if he couldn't be there permanently. The man snapped back, saying that the people in China had also opposed the savior before, so they wouldn't easily accept someone like him now. But the professor explained that China had already agreed to their request and would be arranging for their travel to the East soon. He added that, in all honesty, he had no opportunity left to use his knowledge where he currently was. The man didn't hold back. He called the professor foolish and revealed that they were already planning to build an ark. He said he'd been personally invited to be part of the construction effort and boasted that it was the only true path to survival. With a cold smile, he told the professor that he'd be waiting to watch him crash and burn alongside those peasants. After hearing what the man said, the professor simply sighed and replied that he wished him good luck. Meanwhile, Shen had been watching the entire conversation from afar. He raised an eyebrow and muttered to himself that it wrapped up quicker than expected. Without missing a beat, he told his system to get ready to draw. The system immediately responded, announcing, "Drawing has begun." It then followed up by declaring that the Doomsday Draw was now officially open. It prompted Shen to redeem his points for however many draws he wanted to perform. His remaining balance of 13,500,000 points flashed on the screen. The system added a gentle reminder: the drawing came with risks, so he should choose carefully. Shen grinned and casually remarked that he seemed to be quite rich, but the system quickly corrected him, warning that it was only temporary. Shen chuckled and wondered aloud what kind of surprises he'd pull this time. With a bit of excitement, he began testing his luck. Moments later, multiple cards appeared in front of him. He tilted his head, confused, and asked why there wasn't even a single purple one in sight. One by one, the rewards started rolling in. Quantum laser shaver, external skeleton machine, nuclear warhead. The kind of weird stuff he always seemed to get. He muttered that the system was as unreliable as ever. The last draw was just some research material. It really seemed like luck wasn't on his side today. But then, suddenly, his eyes widened in shock as a new notification popped up. The screen displayed ultra-lightweight building material technology. Grade: blue. The ultra-lightweight building material is suitable for large-scale development with excellent toughness, hardness, and manufacturing efficiency. Supported by a high-quality alloy as a frame, the resulting structure will be highly resistant to impacts. After reading the description, Shen's expression changed. A big grin crept across his face the moment he saw the word alloy. He was reminded that his Taylor-class fortress was also made of alloy. Maybe his luck wasn't so bad after all.
If you've made it this far, please step forward and press the button. Now, open your eyes, step forward, and push the button.
Yes! You see? What a thrill! What a rush! That was you!
Now, I want you to do something else for me. Please press the subscribe button.
Come on, give it a try. Can you feel it? The glow of comfort, even in the face of crushing despair, must already be sweeping through your body. And in fact, can I say that I do believe commenting "let him cook" will lend you an air of charisma as well?
As the hurricane began to take shape, the ocean grew more dangerous and flights were gradually suspended. Transportation between countries was essentially cut off until the apocalypse came to an end. Still, scholars from around the world were finding ways to gather in the East, preparing to use all their wisdom to confront this war against nature. The professor had arrived and was assigned to room 7, where he was asked to follow someone to the meeting area. When he entered the meeting hall, he was completely flabbergasted by the number of smart people gathered in one room. It amazed him that a meeting of this scale had been prepared within just 5 days. He couldn't help but admit that the people of the Celestial Empire were indeed quite capable. There was only one topic on the table: how to make this country, this civilization, rise up and fight against the apocalypse. The commander stepped up to the podium while many members of the press watched closely. The commander stated that they had reached a critical point and asked everyone to pool their wisdom in order to help humanity resist the ongoing disaster. In this war, he said, the wisdom in their minds was their strongest weapon. But just as he was speaking, his words were suddenly interrupted. A man appeared on the large screen behind him, saying he wanted to say a few words before the seminar continued. The man questioned why the Humanist Defense Organization had not participated in this meeting, and said there was no point in holding it at all if they weren't involved. The doctor suddenly stood up in shock, recognizing the speaker. It was Kipling. He was stunned and wondered how Kipling had managed to get into the meeting. The guard standing behind the doctor explained that Kipling had been hypocritically trying to talk them out of attending the seminar just a few days ago. He angrily referred to Kipling as a despicable villain. The commander looked at Kipling with a furious expression and told him that he thought Kipling didn't have time to attend their meeting. But Kipling only grinned devilishly and replied that relying solely on the wisdom of the Chinese people was bold. He clarified that he didn't mean anything else by it, but he simply believed there was no way to overcome such a massive disaster. Suddenly, one of the men at the meeting stood up in a rage and shouted, demanding to know what Kipling had just said and where this yellow-haired monkey had come from. Another person commented that the migration hero was still standing on the podium, and yet Kipling was shamelessly distorting the facts. Kipling, still grinning, responded that he did admire the feat of Yuan Chang's Great Migration, but the disaster they were facing now, he said, was on a whole different level. He went on, explaining that hurricanes and volcanoes would soon sweep across the world and that China alone would have to resettle hundreds of millions of people. And that wasn't even counting the looming disasters of climate change, mass species extinction, food shortages, and so on. Suddenly, a man shouted at the team operating the power controls, demanding they cut the power instead of just standing around. But before they could react, the commander raised his voice, ordering them to let the man continue speaking. The commander explained that the harsh truth would eventually come to light anyway. He wanted to hear exactly what this guy had to say. Kipling continued, stating that while their own country was busy playing what he called the game of ants moving house, his nation had already passed a proposal for a Noah's Ark project. He announced that he was there as a representative of his country and sincerely invited the Humanist Defense Organization to come work with them to build a massive nuclear submarine. According to him, they could survive this global catastrophe much better than the Chinese ever could. One man turned to the others and asked in disbelief what would happen if the Humanist Defense Organization actually believed his nonsense. Another muttered, half to himself, wondering what kind of villain Kipling truly was to even suggest such a plan. The commander addressed everyone, saying that if something like that truly happened, it would be a disaster for all of humanity, regardless of nationality. But even so, they had no choice. They had to give everything they had and focus all their strength on resisting the upcoming catastrophe. He told them that they must not give up until the very last moment, but Kipling disagreed. He argued that the premise of not giving up was having hope, and without the Humanist Defense Organization, he didn't see any real chance of China surviving this calamity. Just then, as if on cue, Shen suddenly appeared out of nowhere, making absolutely sure everyone saw his whole fit, while casually aura farming like it was just another Tuesday. The doctor's eyes widened in disbelief when he saw Shen, shocked that the man had actually shown up in person. Kipling, meanwhile, stared at Shen floating mid-air and thought to himself that none of this was scientifically possible. Like, what? Shen gazed over the group and calmly declared that the Humanist Defense Organization had protected countless worlds and witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. He said that only with the courage to face disasters, the will to never give up, and the spirit of unity, could any civilization endure through the long stretches of history. Only those who carried such qualities were worthy of receiving their attention and support. Then Shen turned his gaze behind him, locking eyes with Kipling, and asked plainly, "Are you worthy?" Everyone who heard Shen's words froze, visibly shocked, for reasons none of them could quite explain. Kipling, however, was more shaken than the rest. Deep down, he knew exactly what Shen meant. By asking if Kipling was worthy, he was essentially declaring that he wasn't. The doctor, watching the scene unfold, murmured that he finally understood. At first he had assumed the Chinese government and the so-called savior had some secret deal behind closed doors, but now it became clear. They had simply shown their efficiency and courage, and that was enough. The guard beside him muttered under his breath that, meanwhile, the people in the country were too busy protesting and mocking the situation. The doctor nodded slowly, admitting that he used to sympathize with those protesters, believing they had been misled. But now, after seeing this, he hadn't expected the Humanist Defense Organization to so clearly side with the Chinese, all because of their performance. Kipling turned toward Shen and challenged him directly. He reminded him, "Aren't you the savior? Shouldn't a savior protect everyone? With great power comes great responsibility." He went on, insisting that a true guardian should protect the entire world, not just parts of it. And then with narrowed eyes, he demanded an answer. According to Shen's plan, how many human sacrifices were considered acceptable? Shen smirked. Calmly, he replied that what he protected wasn't individuals, it was the principles of humanity, and its survival as a whole. As long as civilization continued to exist, he didn't care how many people died along the way. He explained further, saying that the survival of a single person had a different value depending on context, and couldn't be generalized. It was cold logic, but logic all the same. Suddenly, a man stood up and spoke out. He said he agreed with Kipling. All lives should be equal, and they should be treated as such. He stared at Shen and added that even if Shen was a god, he was a cold one. Kipling lit up at that. Hyped, he pointed at the man and asked Shen if he saw that, if he realized no one would ever want to work with him if he continued to discard life so casually. Kipling raised his voice and declared that Shen had no right to decide the value of their lives. He went on to say that people like Shen, those who stood above everyone else, looking down and trying to control humanity, would never truly help them save the world. Not from the heart. Then he flopped down in his seat and waved his hand, saying, Never mind. I'm too lazy to argue with a butcher who disregards life like this. I'm out. Shen casually nodded and replied, Yeah, I was just about to show you something humanity needs right now. Suddenly a bright light filled the room, catching everyone off guard. Gasps echoed around as they shielded their eyes and tried to make sense of what was happening. A glowing golden cube floated silently above Shen's open palm. The others stared at him, eyes wide with a mix of shock and confusion. Shen calmly explained, This is a technology designed for building colonial cities in extreme planetary environments, and with our current capabilities, we can finally put it to use, to resist the next disaster. The commander thought to himself that even the virtual imaging technology alone was already extremely advanced, but what he was seeing now felt like it was on a whole different level. Shen grinned and asked the system to show them some real-world footage. The system agreed and began rendering. After a few seconds, it finished and displayed a city surrounded by a protective barrier, shielding it from a seriously messed-up environment. The doctor was absolutely flabbergasted. In his mind, he muttered that this looked exactly like a Martian doomsday storm, a massive, planet-swallowing sandstorm. He couldn't believe the building materials used in that city could actually survive sandstorms like that. If that was possible, then handling tsunamis would be a piece of cake. Another guy chimed in, saying that with materials like this, they wouldn't need to worry about hurricanes or tsunamis anymore. The doctor nodded, and added that a city built like this could probably last for 1,000 years without any major issues. He was seriously looking forward to it. The commander joined the conversation and agreed, saying that with this kind of setup, they could definitely hold their own against any tsunami or storm. Shen nodded, and said that since they now had a clear direction to work towards, he didn't come all this way for nothing. He told them he would continue to keep an eye on things, then turned and left. Kipling, clearly irritated, slammed his laptop shut and cursed under his breath. While swearing bullets, he grumbled that he had been tricked again by those old guys. He muttered that it wasn't even that impressive and warned not to underestimate their own technology and strength. Later on, a disaster response team was formed. In a secret location, a group of people met up. One of them announced that everyone present had been carefully selected from the scientists' conference, and they were now officially part of the top-secret core group. Inside the room, one of the members said it was time to reveal something about the true cause and extent of the end of the world. But just then, another guy interrupted and asked whether the Humanist Defense Organization hadn't already given them the tech to handle it. He was sure they'd manage. Suddenly, Shen interrupted from within the room. He was already there. He said that while the technology provided by the Humanist Defense Organization was powerful, it couldn't fully withstand the kind of massive global-scale sea they were facing. Everyone who heard that was shaken. The commander spoke up, saying that the tech should be able to handle hurricanes and earthquakes, and if it couldn't even do that, then there was no point waiting around for the tsunami. Another guy added that even though Shen had handed them the tech to counter the tsunami, they still might not have the productivity or infrastructure needed to actually put it into use. The doctor then mentioned that Shen had also said something important. As long as they worked hard enough, he'd be willing to help as much as possible. He suggested that they should start digesting the technology immediately and begin pushing for industrial adjustment. No matter what, he said, they needed to take action first. The commander agreed, saying that was exactly right. He told everyone to give it their all and never give up. That, he declared, was the spirit of their resistance, and it would last until the very end. Suddenly, the system spoke to Shen, noting that the people in front of him seemed incredibly inspiring. It even admitted that, despite being an AI, it felt a little excited. Shun told the system to write down all their names and save them as part of a talent pool. The system responded with a quick, "Okay." Then, over a loudspeaker, an announcement echoed throughout the area. The voice declared that, starting today, the entire country would officially enter a state of disaster response and begin industrial transformation. The stock market was being suspended, some industries were gradually shutting down, and overseas students and stranded citizens were being recalled. All available resources would now be concentrated on constructing the new cities. The announcement continued, saying that their entire civilization was facing an unprecedented challenge, and that everyone needed to act. People had to work together to fight the disaster head-on. Soon after, several citizens began receiving messages on their phones. One of them read that the Mo family was actually recruiting volunteers, something no one had ever seen before. Representing the Mo group, the person speaking in the message formally declared full support for all decisions and orders issued by the country. He urged the people to obey the commands of the disaster response team and assist with controlling the food supply across the nation. To protect the food industry, some other industries were temporarily closed so they could better prepare for what was coming. Someone who had just heard the Mo family's statement couldn't help but say that the organization only provided the technology yesterday and today they were already taking action. That kind of efficiency, he said, was incredible. This was the true strength of their country. Next to him, someone suddenly dashed off, yelling that she was going to sign up as a volunteer. Her friend quickly shouted back, telling her to wait until he finished eating. Meanwhile, outside one of the buildings, a large crowd had gathered, all eager to volunteer. Some people were shouting that they had a college degree, while others said they majored in civil engineering. Guards stood at the front, trying to keep things in order. They repeatedly told everyone not to push, to line up properly, and to step forward one by one to receive a form. Those who had already gotten a form were directed to the side to fill it out. One of the guards told his squad leader how shocked he was to see so many people suddenly show up to sign up as volunteers. He admitted he was a little scared to use his strength. The squad leader told him to stop talking nonsense and to go all out in maintaining order. Suddenly, Mo Chu appeared at the window and called out to everyone not to worry. She said that all the factories under the Mo group had already started producing the new building materials. She added that a lot of people would definitely want them, but first, they had to maintain order and avoid making trouble for the soldiers. The people in the crowd looked up at her. One of them asked if the new material she mentioned was the one introduced by the Humanist Defense Organization. Another person chimed in, saying that things were moving way too fast and the efficiency was kind of insane. Meanwhile, Shen was floating in the air like always, wanting everything to match his vibe. He laughed and said that this little girl, referring to Mo Chu, was perfect to be a spiritual symbol. She'd help keep the public calm. Now it was up to her father to pour all his energy into building the factory. His thoughts got interrupted when the female robot floated over to him and said that Mo Yuanba from the Mo group had just called for help. Shen looked confused. He thought that guy should be working with the military right now. But then, a FaceTime-like screen popped up in front of him, created by the robot, and the guy started speaking directly to Shen. Mo Yuanba begged Shen to help him, saying he was in serious trouble. He explained that besides his own group, other big corporations were actually messing around with the emergency response. These were companies that mostly relied on business with the West. Their stocks were all overseas, and they were scared of losing their little fortunes. He sighed and said that Commander Hong couldn't really handle business matters like this, so he was the only one left to deal with it. The problem was that those guys were using tricks to slow him down, knowing the military couldn't do much to stop them. But Shen cut him off and said there was no need to go in circles. In the end, wasn't he just asking Shen to be his backup? Shen smiled and said that with things like this, he was more than happy to help. Over at the Mo Group's private club, a super fancy mansion, some people were hanging out inside. One of them asked why that old guy was threatening them. He cursed and said the guy probably wasn't up to anything good. Another person warned them to be careful, or else they wouldn't even know when he sells them out. He then said that he guessed it had something to do with their new material. The guy in front of him sneered and asked, "Still not giving up?" Another guy added that Mo Yuanba had now found military contracts to back him up, so of course he was walking around with his tail held high. He said it was pretty impolite not to give them any face. Another person cut in and asked what the point of all that was anyway. He said Mo Yuanba was shifting completely to infrastructure now, didn't even have enough experienced staff, and in the end, they were the ones who had to turn a blind eye? Someone else said, "Well," and went on to explain. When it came to the Guans and the Tans, with those two senior families present, even the Menglu group didn't dare say much. But at the same time, they kept really close ties with a bunch of overseas multinational companies. The economic connections were tight, and he was worried this might cause trouble. Then another guy sighed and said, "Who didn't have some overseas investments anyway?" Now, with this apocalyptic mess going on, the market value of all their stocks was tanking. One man said that whether it was Mo Yuanba or some military guy showing up, he'd just eat and laugh like a fool. If they were trying to force him to hand over money, no way. Another agreed and said, "Yeah, let's just enjoy it." Everyone said Mo's cooking was top-notch, so today was the perfect time to finally try it. As they stepped into the room, they were greeted by a table full of magnificent and delicious-looking food. A servant politely informed the madam that the guests had arrived. The old man said, "Hey," and smiled, mentioning that they were all familiar with old Mo. He said it was always this same room whenever they visited. Mo Chu, who stood next to Shen, welcomed them warmly and invited them to sit down. She told them her father had specially asked her to prepare the finest red wine for the three of them. One of the guests pulled up his chair and asked, if old Mo had said he was going to treat them to a meal, then why was a little girl here all by herself? Was the Mo family looking down on them, or had they replaced their master? Just then, Shen spoke. He said that the head of the Mo family was currently coordinating the project with the military and was caught up with official matters. Miss Mo Chiu, he added, was more than capable of handling a few people. The three guests froze for a second, looking surprised. They leaned in toward each other and began whispering. One of them had recognized Shen from a live podcast. Another realized he was the one providing the new materials, the supposed savior. Suddenly, Shen snapped his fingers. A system hologram popped up in front of them, displaying something that made their eyes go wide. They started looking nervous and asked, What is this?" Shen explained that those guys, the Dark Chefs Club or whatever they were called, had tried to use public opinion to blackmail him back when the volcano erupted and everyone was scrambling just to survive. He said he didn't know much about them, only that someone had told him a few of the people here had been dealing with that group while expanding their businesses overseas. One of the men, clearly nervous, asked how Shen knew that. He wondered out loud if old Mo had betrayed them. Shen shook his head and said the problem was that even old Mo didn't know. Another man, looking irritated, asked if Shen was threatening them. He said if the three of them joined forces, even the military would have to give them some face. Then he added, "Young people shouldn't look down on your elders." Shen just sighed and grinned, then replied, "So what?" And then, out of nowhere, he did something that shocked them all. He pulled up a hologram and told them to look at it. He said they were nothing but ants, struggling in this doomsday. The three men stared at the hologram, totally clueless about what they were looking at. So Shen told them that if they didn't want to behave decently, then death wouldn't be a pity. Just then, the commander re-entered the room, telling Shen to stop. He wasn't alone. Mr. Mo had come with him and also told Shen he couldn't do that. All three men and Shen turned to look at them. Mo said that those groups had a lot of experience in overseas infrastructure construction and could be very helpful. Even if they had offended Shen, he asked him to please show some mercy. One of the three guys quickly thanked him, but the commander looked uneasy. He was clearly worried that Shen might accidentally crush them all to death. Mo then stepped closer to one of the men and quietly told him that Commander Hong was trying to say they should act friendly when doing business. Then he asked if the man wanted to continue the earlier discussion with Shen now, or if they'd rather go back to the conversation they had just interrupted. Later in the news, the announcer said that the Mo family, the Guan family, the Tan family, and the Menglu group had all jointly invested in a large cement factory to build new material buildings. The disaster response team had solved the issue of producing the new material and could now master technology from outer space. The world's hottest industry had officially become infrastructure. Meanwhile, most of the Chinese international students had gathered at the airport. Despite hurricanes and volcanic ash disrupting flights, they were determined to return to their homeland. People were wondering why the Chinese all seemed so unified in their thinking. Psychologists had their theories. Meanwhile, Kipling was watching the news and scoffed, calling them a bunch of ungrateful people. Suddenly, someone entered the room and told him not to get worked up. He said he could guarantee they wouldn't be able to produce any actual results. The man explained that he was from China himself and knew the country very well. Kipling looked at him and said he thought the guy would have returned home like his roommates had. But the man shook his head and said he completely agreed with Kipling's view. However, Only here could he actually make use of his expertise. He was a scientist, and if he went back to China, he'd be forced to work construction. Kipling, still a bit annoyed, said he really didn't get what was so great about a country without freedom. The man replied that Kipling was right, and added that he was more suited to live here anyway. Then, out of nowhere, the man asked if he could take a look at Kipling's luxurious basement when the hurricane came. He said he needed to find a decent shelter. Kipling shrugged and said, of course, they always treated their guests well. But before the conversation could go on, his attention was pulled back to the TV as a breaking news report came in. China had just sent back a message. The new materials provided by the Humanist Defense Organization were about to be produced. Kipling was stunned. He found it hard to believe. It had only been a few days. The news continued as two people reported that the first batch of finished new materials would soon be available. They felt lucky to have been able to come into contact with it. One of them touched the material and said it felt like jelly. They asked each other if something like this could actually be used as building material. Kipling and the guy next to him thought it looked like a total failure. They exchanged looks and said they knew it. The man claimed it was just a facade project, rushing out something nobody could understand. Kipling added that it was nothing like what they had advertised and muttered that he was curious to see how Shen was going to handle this one. Then, to their surprise, Shen actually appeared on screen at the site. Seeing him there, Kipling was both shocked and annoyed. He said that every time Shen showed up, something wild was about to happen, always pulling another stunt. The news reporter asked Shen what he meant by catalyst. Shen told her to watch closely. With a snap of his fingers, the jelly-like material vanished from her hand and floated in mid-air above her palm. Then another object appeared next to it, and Shen said, "Start shaping up." As soon as he said that, a bright flash of light burst from the material, making everyone's eyes fly wide open. A few seconds later, the transformation was complete. Shen showed them the result. The jelly-like blob had turned into a slate. The reporter was amazed. She reached out, wanting to reshape it herself, but hesitated, saying it didn't seem very sturdy. It was just a thin sheet after all. Shen raised an eyebrow and said, "Really? Then let's see for ourselves if it actually works."
Meanwhile, somewhere else, a blonde lady was yelling at a bald man, saying she didn't understand how people didn't realize the end of the world could happen soon. She asked him why they were still sitting around, blaming the Celestial Empire for trying to struggle. The man stood up and said their current system was probably about to collapse, just like that in an instant. Hearing this, the girl went speechless. The man kept going, saying those crazy people, even the ones wishing for the end of the world, would grab weapons and flood the streets. Stealing, killing, everything would spiral out of control, and they wouldn't be able to stop it. He looked her straight in the eye and asked if she really thought she was smarter than the national government. She was about to reply nervously, but the man cut her off, saying that the moment the apocalypse was officially announced, the entire public would freak out. He said the people haven't even done anything yet, and they're already being pushed aside. According to him, despair and doubt would spread faster than hope and unity ever could. He then told her to take her manuscript back, saying he'd pretend he never saw it. She responded quietly, saying her kids were still so young. How was she supposed to tell them something like this? The man snapped and shouted, asking if she thought she was the only one with children. Then, calmer, he said this wasn't her fault. It was his. He told her to give herself a break. He sighed and said that when the end comes, she should stay with her family. After everything, Rossetti didn't say another word. She quietly left the room, but before she could get too far, the bald man called out and told her to wait. He said he might have a way to get tickets for the Ark. If she could get the money fast, he might be able to help. But Rossetti shook her head and told him not to be silly. If the world really ended, then his ship wouldn't be going anywhere anyway. She stood up and walked off, thinking to herself that this whole thing was ridiculous. Most people were probably going to die, but she couldn't just give up. She still wanted to survive, with her kids. That's when the Celestial Empire came to her mind. It felt like her only option now. Their new cities might be the last safe places left when the world ends. No matter what, she had to survive with her children. By the way, guys, the Humanist Defense Organization got renamed to the Celestial Empire. The scene shifted to a futuristic-looking city. The commander overseeing the area stood in a control room. He explained that this small test city covered around 700 square kilometers and could hold about 6 million people. Thanks to support from survivors, 3 more test shelters were almost finished. The speed of it all seemed unreal to him. Suddenly, a soldier rushed in and told the commander he needed to evacuate immediately. A massive hurricane was approaching, and the city's resistance test was about to start. To the soldier's shock, the commander calmly said he was staying. The soldier blinked and asked if he really planned to test the city's defense by staying inside it himself. The commander said that time was running out and they had to finish the test before any more lives were lost. He turned to the soldier beside him and reminded him not to forget that he was a soldier too. As a soldier, he said, fear of death wasn't the issue, because in the face of death, there were things more important that were worth fighting for. The city had been built right on top of the sea. Just then, a voice echoed throughout the entire city, warning everyone that a super hurricane would arrive in 6 hours. The voice asked all related departments to double-check their final preparations immediately. It was also announced that the commander and the chief of the emergency response team would personally lead 2 full regiments of soldiers to the site. Their mission was to confirm if this sea-based city could really hold up against a full-force natural disaster. Meanwhile, aboard the spaceship where Shen was staying, he muttered to himself that everything depended on this moment, success or failure. If they could pass this test, then building dozens of similar cities within 7 months would be no big deal. After all, he said, they had a strong will to survive. They had a deep desire to live. Back in the city, the announcer's voice came on again, saying the super hurricane was now only 3 hours away. Time flew by. 3 hours turned into 2, then 1. After that, just 30 minutes remained, then 10. The commander stood tall and still. It had finally arrived. The super hurricane slammed into the city, bringing water, thunder, and chaos. The soldiers were visibly shaken, some even startled, but they held their ground. They reminded themselves this new city was supposed to be unbreakable. There was no way they'd let a little earthquake shake their faith. As the tsunami raged on, a soldier reported that the impact force was still rising and the entire city had been pushed 5 meters east. The commander didn't even flinch. He yelled at everyone to stay calm and to keep recording the resistance data without missing a single decimal. He ordered them to make sure the data was transmitted in real time. To him, that data was more important than their lives. Outside the city, while nature went wild, Shen was calmly aura farming in the sky. He floated there holding an umbrella, just silently watching the chaos unfold. 5 hours later, the sky finally cleared. The sea calmed down, and the city was still standing. The commander stood in place, frozen. It was finally over. The fact that he was still alive could only mean one thing. They had succeeded. Back on the spaceship, the female robot turned to Shen. She told him that the city built using the new material had officially passed the test. Then she smiled and congratulated him for earning 34,000 points. Shen sat quietly, but deep down he felt happy. Those guys had actually pulled it off. He was starting to believe they might really rebuild civilization and make it great again. After confirming that the city was safe, more resources and manpower were sent in quickly. The Celestial Empire began rushing large-scale construction projects into motion. The phase for building real city infrastructure had finally arrived. At the same time, the Noah's Ark project officially kicked off. However, the reality was harsh. Very few people could actually afford the tickets. That annoying blonde boy stood up and told the crowd that he could personally guarantee this underwater shelter would last more than 200 years. He said families would be safe down there, even during the worst of the crisis. But the truth was, the majority of people had already been abandoned. The wealthy folks who were allowed into Noah's Ark didn't care at all about the people left behind. To them, those tickets were just another business transaction. Meanwhile, in another building, Shen mentioned that if they had the resources, maybe they could invite people from other countries to come take shelter in the new cities. The commander looked confused and asked if that wouldn't mean handing over all their hard-earned achievements to outsiders. Shen gave a small smirk and said that in the end, there was no real difference. Whether someone was from here or another country, they were all still human beings living on the same earth. He added that every extra person they could save was another chance for civilization to keep going. Hearing that, the commander looked down, sounding a little guilty. He admitted that he'd been thinking too small and said he would get to work on it right away. 20 days after the Pharaoh City earthquake, things looked like a war zone. Buildings were destroyed, and the whole area was in ruins. Rossetti was walking through the rubble with her 2 kids, just trying to get somewhere safe. But out of nowhere, a man appeared. injured, dirty, and clearly not in a good state. He stepped in front of her and said he was taking their food. She froze in shock, terrified, and asked if he couldn't see she had children with her. The man didn't give a single F. He pulled out his gun and told her not to make him shoot. Before things got worse, a group of people showed up and shouted for the man to drop his weapon. These new guys were armed too, and one of them quickly explained that they were a rescue team sent from the Celestial Empire. But the robber wasn't having it. He pointed his gun at them instead and told them to back off. He shouted that this was his country, then demanded to know how they even got there and what their army was doing. The rescuer looked at the robber and asked what he meant by country. Did he mean that big old ship? Then he got serious and told the man to listen. They weren't there to fight or take over anything. They were there to recruit civilians who were willing to relocate to the new city. He made it clear that everyone was welcome, but not those who had committed robbery, theft, or any other crimes. He pointed toward the woman behind the man and said they were going to take her and her kids with them. He warned the robber not to do anything stupid, but then he added something else. It wasn't too late. If the man truly wanted to change, there might still be hope. Hearing that, the robber froze for a moment. Then he dropped his gun, knelt on the ground, and started begging for their help. He looked broken as he said it felt like the whole world had left them behind. Back in the cities, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew that today, the strongest and most powerful flood in Earth's history was about to hit. This disaster, worsened by the planet's electromagnetic pulse, would be the most dangerous event humanity had ever faced. The sea was expected to swallow the final 5% of Earth's remaining land. Only a few scattered islands would survive. A new maritime age was coming, and even though it would cost lives and sunlight might vanish for hundreds of years, people believed that humanity could still push through. They weren't just giving in, they had hope. Many were still fighting for tomorrow. As long as even a few people survived, civilization would live on, and humanity would never truly disappear. The speaker ended by saying he sincerely hoped every resident in the city, and every person still out there drifting across the ruins of Earth, would get the chance to see the days after the disaster. Then it hit. The disaster arrived, and it didn't take long before fear started creeping into everyone. The commander stood there, frozen as he watched it unfold, overwhelmed by the sight. Next to him, the robot girl said that the destructive force of this flood was probably just as bad as the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. She admitted she wasn't sure if the city's protective shield would be strong enough to handle it. But suddenly, Shen appeared beside her. He told her not to worry, because there was no way he was going to sit back and watch the end come without doing anything. Without hesitation, Shen flew up into the sky. He held out his hand, forming a bolt of lightning in his palm. Then, in one smooth move, he spread that lightning through the entire city like a giant web. Everyone looked up. They could see it with their own eyes. The barrier was glowing brighter, and that was when they realized it was Shen. He was the one strengthening the city's shield. Then the robot girl shouted that she had breaking news. Noah's Ark had just been detected, and it was about to fall apart. Shen stared at the data for a moment before speaking. He said this was the kind of disaster humanity had never faced before. He added that any idea of survival, any talk of persistence, was really just a gamble at this point. With a disappointed look, he quietly said what a pity it was, because the people on that ark lost. But a little while later, the skies began to clear. Then the system's voice rang out, congratulating Shen. He had successfully helped Earth number 878 survive the volcanic eruptions and the massive tsunamis. Based on the principle that one person equals 1 point, Shen had earned a total of 1 billion points to use for drawing salvation tools. By saving 1 million people using only his own power, which accounted for 14.28% of the world's remaining population, he had successfully secured the continuation of human civilization. The system congratulated him once again and informed him that he was now ready to proceed to the next world and begin a new journey of salvation. Shen grinned and muttered to himself, "The next one, huh?" He was curious. What kind of world would he have to save this time? Just then, the female robot approached him and asked if he felt sad about leaving this world behind. Shen nodded slightly and admitted that he felt a little sad, but he wasn't sure if she could really understand the feeling. The robot calmly responded that no matter where he went, they would always follow him. Shen chuckled and said, Yeah, you're so warm," almost like teasing her. Then he looked up and said it was about time. From now on, Earth's people would be on their own. With that, Shen opened a glowing wormhole that hovered in the air. As he prepared to step through it and leave the Earth behind, he turned back one last time and waved. He told the people goodbye, and in the next second, he disappeared into the portal, leaving that world behind.